started. Welcome this evening. We're going to begin with opening roll call. Secretary?
Michael Ollinger.
Here.
Mike Anderson. William Barr. Jim Byrne. Ruth Canagaraja. Here. Ralph Cabello.
Here.
Sarah Donnenberg. Here. Pat Gordon. Hillary Gupta. Here. Mark Cannon.
Here.
Nicholas Hine. Hubert Hines.
Here.
Andrew Kersick. Gavin Kieran. John King.
Here.
Peter Corey.
Here.
Andrew Koontz. Matt Lockman. Sean Leonard.
Here.
Daniel Lersch.
Here.
Sam Lohner.
Here.
Benjamin Lombard. Stephen Lucas.
Here.
Nick Mance.
Here.
Sean Malloy.
Here.
Samantha Miller. Here. Christopher Morrell.
Here.
Jose Munn. Christopher Knopp. Ellie Opelberg. Here. Louis Orazio.
Here.
Luke Pierce. Greg Plum.
Here.
Brian Pullen.
Here.
Kelly Potter. Megan Quinn. Christian Ragland. Okay. Valerie Russell. Present. Amy Sanders. Here. Carolyn Sperry. Here. Matt Sheroff.
Here.
Philip Slusser.
Here.
Richard Tremansky.
No.
Colleen Smith. Here. Matthew Smith.
Here.
Michael Smith.
Here.
Ricardo Torres.
Here.
Ian Dickery.
Here.
And Michael Wallace.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item number 2, adoption of the agenda. Any objections to the agenda as it is now? Representative Malloy?
Do we have to add resolution 15 to the agenda?
The question was, do we have to add resolution 15?
Two resolutions?
Yeah, there's a couple extras. We don't really have to add it. We can add it into new business if we'd like.
That's fine.
Any other objections? Okay, agenda is adopted. Moving on to item number 3, adoption of the past general meeting minutes. You should have received those from Annie via email as usual. Any objections to those minutes? Okay, the minutes are adopted. Open student forum. Are there any students here to address the assembly? You can use that mic right there if you'd like. Thanks so much.
Hey everyone, I don't know if everyone remembers me or not. My name is Marcus Drexel. I'm the president of the Association of Residence Law Students. And I was over here reading, I guess you have a resolution coming up tonight. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it. But perhaps if you want to look at it while I'm up here answering questions, you can do so. But the reconsideration of the common area of recreation in River City. I was just here a couple weeks ago talking about how, before I start chit-chatting with you about the fee, do you have any initial questions on what the very basics of the fee are? I just want to make sure people know what I'm talking about before I start speaking the issue.
Okay, so are there any questions? Representative Hines?
No.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. So are there questions at this time about the fee? Representative Lucas?
Did Arch vote on the fee based on written documents, or was there any specific documents outlining where this money would go, which would be used by one?
Okay, I can answer that question. The answer is, at the time, what we had, when we voted on it, was the controller, the memo that went to the controller's office, and also the oral presentation on the subject. However, there are documents now, and I will address this issue whenever you do. Any other questions?
2 more minutes.
And if
Representative Lucas?
Why was EPA not given a copy of this memo if you voted based on the information? We made multiple inquiries, to my knowledge. The facilities committee were given nothing.
I can answer that question too. Being a little heavy, but that's okay. I am a flexible person. Let's see. This is past Tuesday actually. We had a meeting set up to actually go over the exact documents. We had documents printed out giving every single piece of information we possibly want. Giving exactly every single minute detail of how this will be implemented. This was scheduled for this past Tuesday morning. It was scheduled about a week in advance. And I know things turn up and things happen. However, and I mean, it's a bit of a tough question to answer. There are documents, and we were going to show them to two gentlemen in UPUA. I won't name any names. And what we were told is that by a representative of UPUA was that they felt the meeting would not be productive, and therefore the meeting was canceled. So it's a bit hard to respond to that whenever you're saying that you want to see documents, and then we're going to say, okay, we'll meet with you, we'll show you everything that we have on it, and then we're told that it's not productive. So I don't mean to be defensive here, but that's a bit of a hard situation to answer that question.
Representative Karasik?
Parker, how you doing?
All right, how are you
Fantastic. I guess the real issue here tonight is the meetings were requested, actually, to kind of piggyback off of that, meetings were requested with specific members of Red Light just to get, specific members of Red Light and how to get more information. And then only two people in this organization requested that meeting. And unfortunately, those meetings were then expanded to feature large members and other people. And once we found out Dr. Latta would be joining, and you would be joining us this evening, so I really don't think it was a snub in any regard.
I wasn't suggesting that. I'm just saying that you put me in a difficult situation to answer the question.
One question to you is this: why does ARCH feel that they are exempt from this fee when other student organizations are going to be charged it? If the fee is in fact to promote equality on this campus, which has been suggested by many in HFS and Red Light, then shouldn't all organizations be charged this fee?
I guess I'm trying to understand about the equality issue, because what you're saying, I understand what you're saying. You're saying that all the student organizations should be charged a fee, that we're making a rule for someone, that it just seems like it should apply to everybody. But I think, first of all, you're confusing the original intention of the fee. The original intention of the fee was not necessarily to, promote equality among programming per se. The intention of the fee is to address a very well-voiced concern among residence hall students that a lot of their space that they pay for out of their housing fees is being going towards, for instance, so much of their housing fees go toward these rooms that are supposed to be study spaces. They're supposed to be social lounges. We just heard from a student last night saying about she was upset because there are no more social lounges in the West Hall anymore because either there are programs going on, because there are programs going on there all the time, so there's no more time to be able to go there and study. And I think the biggest confusion right here is that we're saying these are not programming spaces. These are supposed to be study spaces. And you're saying, well, that seems very convenient, that ARCH giving itself an exception to all this. I understand that point of view too. But we're also in kind of a situation that we're trying, as an elected student government for the residence halls, to be able to waive exceptions to that. And I think if one of those things, if you can't govern yourself very well, then you really have no right to govern other people, is what I strongly believe. And if that's the assertion that you're making, that's okay, we can talk about that too. However, the whole thing about making exceptions is so that we can be fair and equitable to different organizations. Any program that we feel that has a strong implicit value to the residence hall students. As a student government, you would think that we should be allowed to be able to say, yeah, you know what, they should be waiving the fee. These are actually benefiting lots of students. And I'm not saying that other programs aren't benefiting other students. I'm just saying that the first priority of these rooms is not for programming. They are for study spaces, they are for social lounges.
Okay, that's all the time we have for
Motion to
questions.
extend time?
Is there a second? Any objections to extending time by how long?
5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes. We have 5 minutes.
Is that all right with you?
Sure.
Yeah. Representative Malloy?
We talked about that. Do you also believe that provisional housing is inhibiting study spaces? A lot of provisional housing is in study spaces that were either on floors. When I lived in East, all the study areas, there's one on every floor, was taken up by provisional housing. Do you think that a lack of housing on campus is also to blame for overall study spaces being created?
It's a bit of two parts to that question. I'm sure you can say that there's some part to it. However, most of the supplemental housing, and trust me, ARCH is with you guys 100% on the issue that there is a problem, that people should not be forced to stay in supplemental housing. However, that's not the topic of the night, so forgive me if I dodge around the question a little bit, just to focus on the issue at hand. However, supplemental housing generally, to be extreme about it, you would never see supplemental housing, say, the East Game Room or the West Study Lounge. That's what this fee is talking about. It's not talking about the study lounges up on, say, third floor walls, or third floor penny packer, or something like that. We're talking about the East Game Room, we're talking about the Pollock Cultural Lounge, the Pollock Rec Room, those kind of rooms that are down on the first floors of buildings. So, trust me, I think hopefully Arch and UPA can work together if ever we find ourselves in a situation where people have to sleep in the Pollock Game Room.
Representative Lucas?
So, based on your comments, it seems as though Arch implemented or agreed to this fee to prohibit student groups from using the space. So if you're saying that students are complaining there's not enough study space, this fee is actually to limit student organization access to this space. Yes.
It is a positive side effect, yes. Or actually, I'd say, you know what, I would go as far
A
as say,
positive side effect, whenever a lot of student organizations do not have the money to pay for this fee. The Pollock Cultural Lounge cannot have multicultural events if they don't have enough money to be there.
like, can you give me an example so maybe we can help people? Let me put it this way.
It doesn't matter what organizations I'm referring to.
Okay,
It's the principle of that.
Okay, sure.
In the hub, we have to pay the rent.
Representative?
Sure, I can answer that question. So, let's say group XYZ is putting on a program in the Cultural Lounge, and they have literally they've poured their heart and soul into this program, and they have literally spent their entire budget on every little thing to make the program, the program of their dreams. I think we'd be really heartless bastards if we said, hey, you know what, we shouldn't waive the fee for you, too bad. That's the whole point of this. The elected student government should have a say in whenever we should deny the rights of students who are living in the residence halls, who are paying for these rooms, deny their rights to let other student organizations use their study spaces.
Representative Miller?
Two things. One, why did Arch feel comfortable voting on something that includes charging students when there was no written documentation at the time of the vote of the memo? And also, why not just put in more stringent requirements to what you have to meet in order to hold the program? Why is it necessary at all?
Okay, so there's two questions. Let's see, the second question about the stringent requirements. Let me just answer the first question. The first question is honestly, and if you want to call us naive, okay, but Arch has been around since the 60s. We pride ourselves on having a fantastic relationship with the administration. And we've never had a situation where the administration has come to us and literally lied to us and said, we're going to have problems with this. And plus, they sent us, the executive board, the documents right away afterwards. And you know what? We know for a fact, if we had a problem with it, I guarantee you that the administration will listen to us. And this is one of the things that we feel an issue, is that we're saying, UPUA has had to stand so far, at least in our interactions, that there's no student oversight of the fee. And we're saying, yes, there will be. Arch is going to have all the information on this. And if what you guys feel is that we need to share this information with you, that's okay. I think Arch would be very amenable to that. But we're saying that Arch is going to be monitoring this very closely. And if there are problems, I'm pretty certain that we can revoke the fee. And if not, then we come back to you. However, I'd be willing to bet all the money in my wallet that we have a good enough relationship with the fee that if we came and said, listen, residents like housing, this fee should be revoked. It's not turning out the way we had planned. I would be willing to bet everything, whatever, my bank account, that they would listen to us.
Representative Corey?
You just said that, Parker, that Arch has had these documents for quite a while. Why have they not been made available to the UPUA? And if you're saying that they could have solved this issue that we're having right now, why were these documents not made available to us to review and look at? We've been requesting for up to 2 months now. Where's the documentation for this fee? Where's the date? Where's the facts that are supporting this fee? And not come up with anything.
Again, I'm saying that we could have produced that information for you yesterday. That was exactly what the point of meeting with the UPA was. There's also something else I would like to address. Because there's this whole issue that I understand where UPA is coming from, saying that we haven't had any information about this. And again, I apologize if I sound defensive. But I'm familiar with your constitution. I'm not familiar that with any on-campus representatives to UPUA are required to go to Arch meetings. And let me tell you what, I know I was on the executive board last year, I was one of the vice presidents, and we requested, I know it's not your fault that your predecessors basically shunned Arch and never came to any of our meetings, but I promise you, you would have heard about this a year ago if the UPA on-campus reps last year had done their constitutional requirements. I'm sorry, that is the truth. You would have known about this. If you're blaming us for not having information by now, again, sorry, but I get a little message on that subject.
Okay, last question. Representative Lurch?
You said you have a great working relationship with the administration. then you probably realize that one of the Graham Spaniard's initiatives is to get rid of wasted space on campus. Do you firmly believe that this fee is actually going to utilize the study space better? I know from personal experiences, a lot of times there are going to be study commons. It might be only me using or 2 other people using these rooms to study. And would that not kind of validate the whole idea behind wasted space? If it's just 1 or 2 people using these rooms, not an entire organization, say 30 or 40 people.
Okay. I understand the concern, and I will be the first to admit that there could be problems. It could go entirely against what ARC is looking for to achieve. I'll admit that. I think all of us can acknowledge that even the most well-intentioned policies go entirely awry. But that's also, I guess there's the one thing I would like to emphasize tonight is I promise you that ARCH is going to be watching this very closely. ARCH is, as again, the elected, I know we're not recognized by the Board of Trustees as someone brought up, but also, I promise you that we will be watching this. And if we find, if that's the case, if we find that, this has turned out horribly, we find that people are upset about this, we've really, hurt lots of student organizations inadvertently, we've really hurt the programming on campus, and in fact, all our positive things that we were looking at, for instance, having the access to the study space, becomes an issue, that's when we get back involved and we say, this needs to be revoked, because it's not working as well as it is. So that's what I'm coming to say tonight. I guarantee you, ARCH is on top of this. We're keeping track of all this. And again, if you want us to report back to you guys, we're more than happy to do so. But we want to try, we very strongly believe that this is going to benefit on-campus students. And yes, I understand that there might be problems that we have to work around with student organizations. For instance, I forget his name. He was just in an article last week, Jeffrey something of the Culinary Club. First thing I did was I emailed him, asking him, listen, if you explain to us your situation, we can help. And that's exactly the point, is that we want to make sure that this is equitable to everybody. And we strongly believe we can do that. And if we can't, or we find that it turns out poorly, then also trust us that we will revoke it.
Okay, thank you. That's all the time we have. At this time, I'd like to yield the floor to Mr. Gravello.
Parker, I just wanted to say before you sat down, thanks for coming out tonight, and you took a lot of tough questions. We've had an ongoing dialogue, the Assembly's kind of been made aware we've had 3 or 4 informal meetings, conversations, and emails and so forth over this. But I just wanted to personally thank you for coming out and taking some tough questions. And just to answer your question about last year, those constitutional provisions were put in specifically to the concerns that were raised by the Arch Executive last year. And that's why this year, hopefully, there's a little bit more communication that's evident by our liaison position and so forth. And we really do look forward to working with Arch. And we're glad to hear that you guys are very passionate about monitoring this. I think you're doing students a service by at least having that mentality, so thank you.
And I'm going to borrow a comment from Senior. I just want to say, I think it's okay for us to disagree on the subject. I think Arch and we have a very good relationship, and I think it's indicative of that we can come out and talk about this. And so, no hostile feelings, no hard feelings.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other students here to address the Assembly? Okay. All right. Moving on to item number 5, report by the President, Mr. Kearns.
You do have reports this week. I don't think I passed around. This past week, the tail end of it was I attended alumni council from Thursday through Saturday. At that portion, George Corey this year, the CCSG representative, is on the executive board. But a lot of the questions were related, and a lot of people had questions from the alumni council about what was going on, such as for the study abroad arbitration or legal services. And people were really interested in the progress the EPU has made in just a short time. As far as substantive information, the legal services, I sent that out to Vice President Sims as well as T. McConaughey, the Dickinson School of Law Dean. Both of them were very pleased to see the document that was passed and that it met a lot of their concerns, and the overall spirit is there. When we get back from break, I think that's going to be my primary focus, is driving that home and just making sure that that's ready to go at some point by the end of this academic year. Other than that, and the report just goes over the online book swap launched. Ralph is going to talk a little bit more about SOCC. I'll let him make the big announcements. There isn't really too much else. I'll stand for questions, but first I'd like to yield 2 minutes of my time to Lou Pierce.
Good evening, everybody. everybody. First of all, I'd like to thank Gavin for the opportunity to speak tonight, and for all of you for letting me address you tonight. Last night I was elected ISC president as Gavin issued over this over there, so I'd like to thank you all for your support in the election process and the campaign process. All the words you encouraged me along the way. It really went a long way for me, and I truly do appreciate it. So thank you to everybody who's me personally knows afterwards. It really got you all, and it means a lot to me. Leaving my post as director of Review Life was not a difficult decision for me. That sounded terrible. It was a difficult decision for me, but I'm not one to leave anyone high and dry, so I'll make sure that Gavin and Mike are provided with enough names here to fill that post with the right type of people, so I'm not filling this organization high and dry. I think today marks a new day in the direction of student leadership here, and the opportunities for both UPUA and ISC communities are truly immense here. And then this could mark and as I promised in my resignation speech, I am going to fast track the issues that I face as director of Review Life. I'm going to call on other Greek leaders to do the same here. So moving forward, this is the first step in a big relationship that can be potentially groundbreaking for both of our communities. So I hope you all will support me for my efforts as I move forward here as ISC president. And again, thank you for all your support in the past couple of years. What? I don't know. There are any questions. I'm happy to answer them.
Are there any questions?
Thank you again, everybody.
Okay, with that, are there any questions for President Kierans? Okay, if not, we will move on. Moving on to item number 6. Special presentations. We have Dr. Stan Latta here with us this evening. That abbreviation, Assistant Vice President for Housing and Food Services, Residence Life. So that's what he does, not just all those letters.
Thanks, Valerie. Appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity to be here this evening. I want to thank Ralph for the invitation. I'm passing around an organizational chart, and you may have to share it, and I apologize for that. I didn't probably make enough copies. But I don't want to bore you with a lot of details, and I'm going to leave some time later for questions that you may have with me about housing and food services and residence life. But let me just preface my comments by saying I think I have a very unique job here at the university. I have the opportunity to actually report to 2 different people at the same time. For housing and food services, I have the opportunity to report to Gail Hurley, who's the Associate Vice President for Auxiliary Business Services. So for housing and food services, I report up to the business side of the house. For my residence life responsibilities, I report up through the Vice President for Student Affairs. So I actually have the opportunity to work on 2 sides of 2 very large organizations in Penn State. And it makes my job very unique and very interesting. I'll go through some of the organizational chart once everyone has an opportunity to see it. But basically, as my title states, I have responsibility for housing, food services, and residence life here at University Park, and for the residence hall operations at our 8 other campuses that house students. I work very closely with Chris Hurley, who is the Senior Director for Campus Housing and Food Services. I also work very closely with him and his staff who operate the bakery and our warehouse here on campus. So as you can imagine, making sure that we can feed all the students both here at University Park and the campuses, house all those students, and take care of all their residence life needs, it creates some very exciting opportunities for me. Does anybody have a copy or can share the org chart? The first person on there is Dave Ginger. Dave is responsible for all of our retail operations on campus. So all the food services that are located here in the hub, and autos, all of the cart operations on campus, McKinnon's Cafe. He's also responsible for Cafe Laura, which is our working relationship with the Hotel Restaurant School and all the students who work in the Hotel Restaurant Administration. He's also responsible for all the catering operations in the Beaver Stadium during football Saturdays. So his job is one that's very exciting and very, very busy, as you can imagine, especially on weeks leading up to game day. So he's responsible for all the food services in the Letterman's Lounge, with the Recruiters Lounge, and the Mount Mindy Club, with our corporate tailgating club. Each time the Visiting Alumni Association brings their folks on campus and hosts a tailgate, he's responsible for providing food services for that. He's also responsible for job of catering. So he's a very exciting job and a very busy job in terms of all the catering events and all the retail events on campus. Next person is Lisa Wandell, and I'm sure some of you know Lisa. She's our Director of Residential Dining. So all of our dining commons on campus, she and her staff are responsible for providing all the meals to you. For those of you who live in the residence halls, are responsible for all the menu options. She's also responsible for the new eatery in Simmons, the new healthy eating option that I think hopefully some of you had the opportunity to see. So in consultation with her student advisory staff, they came up with a new idea for more of a healthy eating option on campus. For those of you who live in the West, you may be familiar with the new organic, healthy C-store that they've opened, Sisu in West Falls. She and her staff are responsible for those operations. Conal Carr is our Director of Housing. He's a duly appointed person. He had worked in housing and residence life, and now he's the Director of Housing Operations for all of University Park campuses. So all the physical maintenance, all the taking care of all the housekeepers and all of our residence halls, he's responsible for those operations. Some of you may know Diane Andrews, the Senior Director for Residence Life. All of our residence life operations here at University Park and at the campuses fall under her jurisdiction. So I work very closely with her on developing a living and learning model for our residence halls. She's responsible for all the RAs and all the coordinators and assistant director staff that work in our residence halls. Lynn Dubois is our Director for Ancillary Services. You might say, what the heck is Ancillary Services? She's responsible for the assignment process here at University Park, for all of our summer conference groups, and for all the Commons Desk operations. That falls under her jurisdiction. And last but not least, the person that you probably will never see is Lee Irwin, who's our Director of Facilities. You can imagine having over 50 buildings on this campus, over 4 million square feet of space to maintain. There are a lot of physical plant concerns and needs that have to be met on an annual and daily basis. And Lee's responsible for working with our outside contractors and with our Office of Physical Plan on any renovation and building contracting processes that we have going on in the residence halls. Probably you might know that I had the opportunity to work in the hub for a number of years, but prior to that I worked in residence life, and prior to that I was a student here at Penn State. I did not come to Penn State to be in my current position. I actually came to be here in environmental resource management. So I'm going to spend a couple minutes talking to you about something that's very passionate with me, and that's the whole aspect of sustainability, our carbon footprint, and our recycling efforts. Gavin had the opportunity this evening to have dinner with us as we talked about the upcoming Board of Trustees meeting. And one of the things that we shared with Gavin was a program called our Energy Savings Program that we instituted on campus, and we've taken it very seriously in our residence halls. We've tried over the last 5 years to look at ways to save energy and to save resources in our residence halls and our dining operations. Some of you may be familiar with the composting that goes on. We ask you to take your napkins if you leave in our dining commons, put them in a separate bin. We save probably 26 tons of napkins every year that go out and are processed and are combined with other organics to create the organic material that landscape uses around our campus. So we're saving 26 tons of refuse material that would go to our landfill. We're recycling it and we're using it on campus for a usable purpose. As you look at some of the changes we're doing in our residence halls, we're putting in low-flow shower heads, low-flow faucets to help conserve water. We're changing all of the ballasts and all of our lighting fixtures on campus to conserve electricity. We're changing the lights themselves. We're getting away from incandescent and fluorescent lights and onto the more energy-efficient lights that you see. So we're trying to take a positive step in terms of saving resources, saving dollars, but also saving the future of our planet. So I would ask you, in your role as undergraduate student government representatives, and any resources that you can muster or any efforts that you can put forward to help educate your peers about the importance of energy and natural resource conservation. It's a passion area of mine that I've had ever since I was a young boy, which was just a couple weeks ago. A little rotten back there. So anything that UPUA can do in our efforts to help conserve energy, to conserve resources, and to be concerned about your carbon footprint on Earth, we would appreciate that. You may have seen in our buildings the Take Charge program where we actually put stickers above the lights, asking students to turn those lights out. When we have new building and renovation projects, we're putting in motion switches so that as a student leaves the room, after about 20 minutes, the lights go off automatically to help conserve electricity. So again, anything that you can do to help in those efforts, we would greatly appreciate. Questions? I wanted to make sure I save time for questions.
Questions?
About what I do or anything that you have in particular?
Representative Sanders?
I think that the green initiative is great now, and I've always mentioned and stuff like that. But I just want to ask you a question about that I've asked since like first time off in this freshman. I'm just wondering why we don't have paper towels or like hand dryers in all the bathrooms.
question. We get that question very frequently. If you notice in all public facilities in our residence halls, you will find either a hand dryer or paper towels. What I think she's referring to is we do not provide paper towels or hand dryers on the residence hall floors. We assume that students will use their own towels, and it is a sanitary issue, there's also a conservation issue, there's also a cost issue. The cost to provide hand towels, and we've looked at that, would be quite considerable if we wanted to provide those kinds of services in each of the residence hall bathrooms. We've assumed that students will bring their own hand towel or bath towel when they use the facilities above the ground floor because it's a private living area. We've always looked at it as a private living area, much the same way if you lived in an apartment, you would go to your bathroom and use your own hand towel or a bath towel. To provide electrical hand dryers, which would probably be the most sanitary way to go as opposed to paper refuse, to provide electrical capacity in each of our bathrooms would be cost prohibitive. So from an electrical standpoint, it would be very, very difficult to do. We could provide paper hand towels. They're quite expensive. Paper is not generally recyclable at that level of the recyclable chain. And we think that it would be just too costly.
Other questions? Representative Donenberg?
I live on campus, this is my third year, so when you talk about conserving energy, one of the things I noticed is that it's very hot when we use it. And like literally we will open our windows because we're so hot in our room. So is that like, why is that? Is it just because of the solar function or what?
Sadly, when most of our residence hall facilities were built over 40 or 50 years ago, we put steam heat in all of our facilities. At that time, coal was probably only about $4 or $5 a ton. It was very economical, and we have steam throughout campus. Steam today is not a very efficient way to heat. There's a lot of energy waste that goes into producing steam. It might be good to produce steam for turbine generators to produce electricity, but to heat hot water and run hot water through the system using steam, it's costly because of the cost of coal now. It's not easy to regulate, and it creates a great deal of something we call sludge in all of our heating systems throughout the buildings. That sludge has to be removed to make the heating systems more compatible and more energy efficient. All of our new construction, we're not using steam. We're using what's called a Wayland unit, which uses electricity to produce both heat, hot air heat, and also produce air conditioning. So we've changed in all of our new renovations to a new form of heat, but most of the Pollock, south, west, east areas were built at a time when steam was very economical, but you're absolutely right, it's a tremendous waste of energy because you have to open the windows to regulate that kind of heat. We recognize that in our new construction, we're trying to address that.
Representative Morel?
Stan. I'm fine, thank you.
Alright, so I hear you were coming up compared to something but we all know that there's strikes here at Penn State, everything's going to increase. But I mean, I have to ask myself, what is reasonable? Where does it all stop? So I look at the new thing with Arch and I say, well, I don't know if that would happen if the facilities would be good. So I say, you're trying to create a dialogue with Penn State students, with trying to get the pulse of the students. But I mean, how do you expect the dialogue to happen when you announce it to you on Tuesday and national news? I know about the fee, but I guarantee you that of the 700 locations on campus, that 699 of them didn't come down. So, I mean, where does it all stop? And, where's it going to go? Where's this fee going to go?
Good question. I'm certainly not offended by that question. If the Assembly would just humor me for a second, let me take you back to 1999. At that time, no non-resident student group could use residence hall facilities. But at the time that this facility began its renovation process and expansion process, we went to ARHS and we went to student government and said, we're going to be under a severe crunch for space on campus when this facility, the hub, undergoes its renovation. Would the residence halls consider allowing non-resident student groups to use space in the residence halls because this building is going to be impacted during construction? And Residence Life, ARHS at that point in time said, yes, we would allow non-resident groups to use the residence hall space. The reason non-residence hall groups did not use the space up until that point in time was the space is supported by the Students' Room and Board Element. And you heard Parker earlier say that students pay as part of their room and board funds to help support all the common space in our residence halls. The Residence Hall program, Housing and Food Services, receives no general support from the university. We get none of the general appropriation that we get from Harrisburg. So the entire operation to operate Residence Life, Housing and Food Services, is borne on the backs of the students who live in the residence halls through their room and board rates. So, make a long story short, the AHS agreed in 1999 that residence hall space could be used by non-resident groups. After the hub was finished, they continued to allow that. Well, some problems began to emerge. Students who weren't necessarily affiliated with the group were reserving space for a friend who may have been part of the karate club, and the karate club was then using residence hall space. So we tried to close that loophole. But I think over the last 7 or 8 years, our residence hall-based groups have raised the concern that because so many non-residence-based groups were taking the space and using it for their programs, many of the residence hall-based groups were finding it difficult to use their space, that their room and board dollars actually wanted to support it. So we last, January, about a year ago now, we went to AHS before the facility fee was actually passed by the Board of Trustees and said, how can we work this out? What do we need to do? We worked with them to say perhaps a fee, a nominal fee, might help protect our residence-based groups in terms of reserving those spaces. Certainly you heard Parker say this evening that if a residence hall-based group or the Student Government Association, one of the residence halls, wants to co-sponsor an event with a non-residence-based group, there'd be no fee for that. It's also important to know that this is not a revenue-generating kind of fee for housing. This was a fee that we put into effect to try to minimize the loss of space for our residence hall groups and to try to recover some of the housing costs associated with setup, tear down, wear and tear on the equipment in those facilities, because when they use tables and chairs or other kinds of equipment, or our housing staff have to come in and clean, it's the students who live in those residence hall areas that are actually paying for those services, not the non-residence hall group that's using that space. So we thought perhaps that a nominal fee might help protect our residence hall groups from using that space. I have the support that Parker said this evening. I mean, we're going to study this over the course of next year. If ARHS comes back and says this is very detrimental to ARHS and to our students on campus, we're going to reconsider it. This is not a fee that we're actually instituting like the facilities fee that we're going to apply to some end. It was really meant as a way to try to control and regulate and try to recover some of the operational costs associated with the use of that space.
Representative Quinn, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do actually. I heard that full pilot program divided for comments, where students were giving out just school chase what they're doing up. But the problem is, I don't think there are any applicants outside of the comments, so there's no passion to it. And I was wondering if you have plans to put those in like residence halls, and also if you're going to replace any of the styrofoam plastic.
Good question. We have 2 questions here. The program in Bedford is a pilot program, and we're trying to see how it works and how we can better educate students about the whole issue of compostability. Sometimes I think students in their haste might be confused with recycling and compostable bins and forget that you have to separate things and put them in appropriate bins. So we're trying to work with EcoAction to try to find out what the best way to compost is in our residence hall dining areas, and then we're going to spread that to all of the campus once we work out the bugs. So we are going to spread that out. And in terms of styrofoam, we have now replaced, and we're in the process of using up all of our existing inventory of styrofoam products, and we've gone completely to compostable plastic materials, both knives, forks, spoons, plates, and cups. So we recognize how important issue that is for students, and we're trying to fix that.
Representative Karasik. This is going to be our last question if we do not extend time, just as a warning.
Dr. Latimer, I understand.
Yes, you may. Everyone can.
Okay.
That's my name.
Obviously, I'm in UPUA, otherwise we'll be here this evening. But you should know that I'm also an ARCH. I am the Executive Vice President of Whitehall. And so I feel that I'm authorized to speak for my constituency in that I and my constituency are strongly opposed. And that is because there are members, there are people living on campus are members of organizations and presidents of organizations that exist that are considered off, that are considered not part of the on-campus community and are still going to be hurt detrimentally by this fee. And whether it's nominal, that's now new fundraising initiatives about to take place. So my question becomes twofold. Number one, how does money coming into HFS make up for Arch and other organizations losing space, because money and space don't exactly, you're still going to lose the space, you're just now getting some money for it. And then my other question is, why did it take so long? It's my understanding that you provided us with this evening. Thank you. But why did it take so long for our facilities fair knit man and others to receive actual documentation, meetings, information? Why did it take until this past Tuesday, yesterday, to have a meeting where documentation is actually included as part of that? And so that's a two-part question for Marty.
Well, and it's a tough question for me to answer because I will tell UPUA that we in Housing and Food Services did what we've always done when we're consulting with our students about issues that affect the residence halls. We consulted with AHS. We have done that. That's been a practice of ours. They're the group that's been elected by their constituents to represent the interests of students living in our residence halls. And in the past, and up until this particular issue, we have always consulted with AHS on issues that directly affect students living in the residence halls. So we thought we were doing what we are supposed to do and what we want to do in terms of consulting with the students and the student organization that best represents those students' interests. I had a meeting with Nick along with Gail Hurley last week where I shared with him that document, and I said that when he was in my bring the document, if you or anyone from the assembly wanted to meet with us earlier, I mean, my calendar is always open. I encourage students to meet with us. I'd be more than happy to meet with students about any issues they have as it relates to living in residence halls or any issues with food service or residence life. So I can't answer the question that you raised about the forthcoming of the information. I got it here as quickly as I thought was appropriate, and if there's an issue with that, I'd be more than happy to chat with you about that. And as a follow-up, I would challenge UPUA if there is another way to suggest to AHS how they might consider regulating this issue that they have about the loss of space for residence hall groups in those spaces. I think they'd be more than willing to listen to the council's thoughts about ways that they can help fix that problem. The easiest way to fix it would be to go back to the policy that we instituted in 1999, which is no non-residence hall groups can use the space. That might be the easiest solution to go back to. It would mitigate the problem for the residence-based groups. But certainly, if you have suggestions and thoughts about how better to manage that, I think AHS would be more than willing to. I'm Parker, I'm speaking for them, I apologize, but I think they would be willing to listen. Thank you.
That's all the time we
Motion to
have.
extend time?
Any objections? How much time would you like?
5.
5 minutes? Okay, because there's several hands. Okay, 5 minutes. Any objections to extending time by 5 minutes? Would that be okay
That's
with
fine,
you?
I'll stay till midnight if you'd like.
All right, we'll be here. Representative Leonard.
All right.
Thank you.
I initially did have a question about defining what would be resident organizations and non-resident, but I feel like I should answer your challenge that you just posted.
Oh, please direct me to AHS.
Okay. Well,
Because we worked with them, they came to us and said, we have this issue, and we bandied it back and forth for several weeks and said, how best to solve this, and we thought this might be an appropriate solution. So I would encourage you to address those suggestions to AHS.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll just say that anyway, since Parker is here in the room.
Well,
Stan.
he's standing for questions, so let's just address him. We can talk to
Okay.
Parker more later.
So how would you define a resident and non-resident organization? I feel like that's probably one of the biggest problems here. Because if you look at Atlaston, which Kelly Costello defined as a resident organization, it's no longer really a resident organization. It started out that way, but it has hundreds of members, most of which might or might not be residents, and yet they're allowed to use the rooms without being charged. And then you look at another example, like Kelly Costello goes to the Harry Potter Club. Just an example, but how many of those members are actually residents that live on campus? And I would say that there are probably a higher percentage of those on-campus residents in the Harry Potter Club who lives in Atlaston. And to say that Harry Potter Club can no longer use the rooms without having to pay for it, I mean, how can you regulate that? And how can you think that that's fair?
I'm going to defer that question to AHS. They are the folks that advise us about the use of space in their facilities. So, you heard Parker say tonight that he's going to be very thoughtful about who gets charged and who doesn't. So, if there's a way that the group can be helpful to AHS in terms of making a determination, you raise a good point. We're all citizens of the United States, right? But we all don't pay the same taxes. It's different for different folks, and someone has made a decision about how that works. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but, you're right. There are residence hall students who are part of student organizations who are not considered part of a residence hall-based student organization. But I think Parker and his staff are looking at that and saying they're going to be more lenient than they are restrictive because some of their groups are getting squeezed out of the use of the space. That's all.
Representative Malloy.
I'm not going to talk about the fee, the larger issues at hand. For all my years here at Penn State, I'm just trying to address what my constituents have been talking about. Is that a lot of students have seen, a lot of buildings go up on campus over the last 4 years. And last year, I believe we had a presentation right here talking about the capital plan. And it was asked about furthering residence halls, building more residence halls. See all these buildings over on campus. And they said that it was on permanent hold. There was a plan progress that was on permanent hold. And I was wondering what efforts are being made to address the issue of more students from Penn State. We're becoming more prestigious university, more people are applying, we're accepting more, and more people are being pushed to provisional housing. And students are upset about that. So what plans are there plans, and if so, what are they to build more residence halls on campus?
Well, you've asked two different questions. Okay. I don't want to do a long lecture about this because I know my time is limited. We are looking at ways of funding our residence hall expansion, if you will, or renovations. Right now, the next area in our capital plan to look at is South Halls. South Halls is that area where we're hoping to gain some funding to help support. Because we're part of the General University borrowing package, we're put in that same room. We Housing and Food Services President Select cannot go out and secure our own bonds to build our space. We have the means to pay for it through room and board dollars, but we can't go out and secure a loan because we're tied into the debt service for the overall university. So right now, we're about maybe 3 or 4 years away from funding becoming available in the capital plan that the university can go out and borrow that we can use to renovate South Halls. But right now, we're looking at other ways of perhaps renovating our facilities. Are there third-party ways that we can look at in terms of partnering with different funding sources to help renovate some of our facilities? As I said, some of our buildings are 50, 55 years old. They're what I would call tired. They're at the end of their useful cycle. There are major mechanical systems need to be replaced. And so we need to think about that before we have a major failure in one of those facilities. So we're looking at alternative ways of funding as opposed to going and borrowing money from the university. Are there other ways that we can secure funding, like the University of IUP, the University of Pennsylvania? Their foundation has actually loaned the residence halls money to help build and construct new residence hall facilities. Are we going to build new facilities on this campus? Probably not, because our existing inventory is in need of major renovation. So we're going to focus on that probably first. And South is probably the first one that line. Phil says.
Okay, that's all the time that we have.
Motion to extend time?
Is there a second? Second. Any objections to extending time? By how many minutes?
5.
5 minutes. Any objections to that?
Yes.
There's an objection.
I feel like this is just going to be a continual round circle discussion. I feel like it's just going to keep going around in circles, but right now we can't answer the problems. It'd be better if we schedule meetings to actually get something done, and we should move on with our agenda.
Representative Moy?
Speaking for the extension. I feel that we're having a very good discussion here. We talked about the fee. I feel we're addressing more issues that, as a whole, we can all know right now, as opposed to scheduling separate weekly.
Any other objections, comments? Okay, would you stay if we did,
Yes.
okay, extend time by 5 minutes? We've already extended it by 2 now. Okay, show of hands, extended time. Okay, time extended by 5 minutes. Thank you for staying. Representative Corey.
evening, Solana. You previously stated this evening that student groups such as government groups, PSA groups would be sponsored, would be exceptions to the fee. But it was previously stated by Diane Andrews that we would not be exceptions to the fee. We would actually have to pay the fee to rent out these rooms. Is there clarification on this, or?
If you're sponsored by the Residence Hall area government, there's no fee. Does that answer the question?
Yes. Okay, yeah.
Representative Lombard.
Thanks for coming in.
No problem.
The state of Pennsylvania is taking off the cap of electricity costs in the year. I was just wondering, what efforts are you making towards making the cost, that burden of cost, not felt by the students as much as could be? Also, I heard that there was windmill power that is looking for being implemented at the university. I was just wondering if there
I know our folks in the Office of the Research Plan are looking at numerous ways to help conserve electricity and generate power. Although we have a power plant on campus, it probably generates just enough power for us to maintain our emergency power on campus. It's not a commodity that we can use. So the university probably buys 95% of its electrical capacity from an outside provider. You're right, the university has appealed the lifting of that cap for Penn State, and they did not win their first appeal, so they've gone to the second level to try to impose, to make sure that those caps are not removed from Penn State. But for all of you who either rent an apartment or your families or your parents, when Pennsylvania removes the cap on electricity, all of us will feel probably a 50 or 60% increase in our electrical rates throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. That's why Penn State's actively trying to pursue legislation to hold the cap at the university until we can better manage internally. In terms of wind farms, I have not heard that, but I'm sure that our folks in physical plan are looking at all kinds of alternative ways to generate power for campus.
Representative Slesser.
As an employee of Farm Services, I often work at it at the compost facility. I was wondering where funding comes from to run that facility.
So that's a good question that you might direct towards the Office of Physical Plan. Al Matashowski is our person on Penn State who runs all of our recycling and our composting efforts. And actually, the university is saving money by doing the composting and by doing the recycling. Every ton that we can preclude from going to the landfill saves the university money. So the savings we plow back into operating those kinds of facilities because in the long term, there's a greater savings to the university. In terms of plant material, rather than going out to a private person and ordering 5,000 tons of whatever it would be to plant around our campus, we're creating our own. So while we're paying somebody to help manage that and help produce it, long term, we're actually saving money because we're not having to go out and buy our own materials. So that's how those programs are self-supporting and self-sustaining. The other thing that we're doing is we're taking all of our cooking oil that we have in our residence halls and we're converting it into biodiesel. We have a relationship with the Office of Physical Plan where they come around, take all of our used cooking oil from the residence hall areas, take it out, process it, and create biodiesel fuel. There's a cost to do that, but in the long term, we're saving money because we're creating biodiesel fuel for our farm tractors that we probably get a chance to work someday.
Okay, last question, Representative Lucas.
Thank you for coming out today, Dr. Vaughn.
You're welcome.
Dan,
We'll get it.
Steve. I have a question. It's pretty much the elephant in the room. A lot of us are opposed to this fee. I think you can sense that from the comment and from the questions. But is it worth our time to pass a resolution saying we don't agree with this fee and our constituents don't agree with this fee? Because up until now, we haven't been taken seriously as a body. Our voice has not been heard by the administration on a lot of matters, including the facilities fee passed last year, despite our voice of opposition. Is it worth our time to say we don't agree with this, or is this just going to get pushed through?
Mark, you're still here. Let me challenge ARHS. And I don't mean to put this elephant back in your court. We worked with, as I said earlier, the student group that we always work with as it relates to issues that involve residence life and residence halls and housing. I would suggest that if this body wants to pass this resolution, that you suggest to Parker, and we're willing to look at this again from the administration's perspective. If ARHS comes back to us and says, we want to rethink this, we're fine with that. I mean, we didn't institute this fee, like the facilities fee, to go out and build new facilities for students on campus. This was just a cost recovery to try to recover some of the costs and labor costs that we have to maintain this facility. But if there's a way to get to the end, which is to create additional opportunities for our resident small groups, and it doesn't involve a fee, from a housing and food service perspective, we're fine with that. So I don't mean to put this burden back on AHS, but if there's a way to resolve the issue of student resident small groups being able to use the space and not charging a fee, I'm supportive of that.
Okay, thank you very much for being here. We are out of time.
Let me say this, if you'd like to have me back sometime for some other discussion that doesn't involve a fee, I'd be more than happy to do that. Thanks for the opportunity.
None, new business, starting with Resolution 14, introduction by Chairman of Academic Affairs Committee, Matthew Smith.
Alright, I'd like to use my time with my program chair to speak on behalf of the
Okay, President Lombard.
Well, thank you for bringing this forward already. December 10th will be our annual Academic Council Conference, in which we bring all the different student councils, academic student councils, in one room talking about different undergraduate education issues, and hopefully it usually brings a good brainstorming session along with that for different activities that student groups have done in the past and that other groups may want to do in the future, and really just creates, kind of a networking session also. So in the document you'll see that we are going to be catering food, and we found in past years that by offering dinner there's a lot greater attendance. I don't know how that works out, but it seems like it works well that way, and also provides for a better environment. So you'll see that I'm requesting $636.61, and that is to cover the cost of the food that will be offered that evening. We're roughly for about 35 students. So if you have any questions, I'll take them.
Questions? Mr. Carvello?
When are you sending out the invitations for this?
I am sending, it was actually today.
Other questions? President Moy?
Usually we have a similar last year.
Actually, it was started last fall, and then continued in the spring, and then this would be the third. Other questions? Okay, thank you for the introduction. Okay, discussion on Resolution 14. Mr. Carvello.
Just like to say that was it last spring that Valerie did it? There was a little bit more money, so I think Ben did a better job at marketing the catering service. So that jumps out at me a little bit. But this is a very valuable experience to share that with Affairs Committee last year. It was great to see all the councils come together. As you know, UPUA holds or offers and seeks them to allow us to elect their faculty senators and unite the different colleges behind UPUA, the student voice. So this is a very important meeting for all of them to get together, become familiar and calm with the leadership of UPUA and the committee, a chance for the committee to get feedback from the councils, and for the councils also to see what other councils are doing since they do not get to interact. They are the governing bodies of their respective colleges. So overall, I think this is a well worth the investment, and we're even saving a little money on top of that. So.
Further discussion?
motion and discussion. Second.
Any objections to end the discussion on Resolution 14? Okay, we'll move into a vote on Resolution 14. Secretary.
Alright, Michael Aldinger,
Yes.
William Barr,
Yes.
Jim Byrne,
Yes.
Rob Carvello,
Yes.
Sarah Donnenberg, Hillary Gupta,
Yes.
Mark Cannon,
Yes.
Nicholas Hine, Hubert Hines, Andrew Karasik,
Yes.
John King,
Yes.
Peter Corey,
Yes.
Sean Leonard,
Yes.
Daniel Lerch,
Yes.
Sam Lohner,
Yes.
Benjamin Lombard,
Yes.
Stephen Lucas, Nick Mann,
Yes.
John Malloy,
Yes.
Samantha Miller, Christopher Morrell,
Yes.
Christopher Knott,
Yes.
Ellie Ockelberg, Greg Plum, Bryant Poland,
Yes.
Kelly Potter, Megan Quinn, Christian Ragland, Amy Sanders.
Yes.
Carolyn Severi.
Yes.
Philip Slusser.
Yes.
Richard Tremansky.
Yes.
Colleen Smith. Yes. Matthew Smith.
Yes.
Michael Smith.
Yes.
Michael Wallace. Yes.
Okay, resolution 14 passes 35-0-0. Moving on. We don't see this on your agenda, but you have a resolution 15. Has to be brought to the floor by 2/3. Do we have an introduction of this?
I make a motion to, you're talking about the reconsideration of commissary record fees?
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to bring to the floor. Yes, this is a resolution.
What do we not bring it
Resolution 15 is being brought to the floor with introduction. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I was going to
Okay, sorry. This is the reconsideration of commons area recreation rooms fees. Everyone find that? Everyone's shuffling around. Does anyone not have this document? Okay. Is it advanced?
This is a resolution describing the commons area rec room fees. As we know them, it kind of calls for some urgency on the part of the assembly, since supposedly this is going to be voted on Friday at the Board of Trustees meeting. It is basically just asking for proper documentation of the fee brought forward, as well as just for this fee to be delayed. So I ask the attorney to forward.
Yeah, Nick, it's not being brought to the Board of Trustees meeting this night.
Oh, it's not?
No.
Oh, okay. That's good.
No.
Lucy, any questions?
That's it. Based on bringing it before, yes, I'll stand for questions.
Okay. Any questions? Any objections to bringing this to the floor? Okay, discussion on resolution 14. Would you like to introduce it?
Sure. Can I just hear me here, or should I go to the front?
Whatever's, that's nice if you come up here. Whatever you want to do.
First of all, I just wanted to commend and thank Peter Borg and Sam Lohner from my committee. They really did a lot to help me write this. This has been a very busy week for me, and they've actually met kind of on their own, off time, away from a committee meeting or an assembly meeting, without me really having to tell them to, and kind of went and did most of it. So I just want to thank them for that, and for them to come up with me when it's time to start answering questions, if I can do that. Okay, so the nature of the situation, most of it is self-explanatory. 21-22, it basically tells us a bunch of things that Parker explained to us, as well as Dr. Lauder earlier this evening, so I don't want to be too redundant here, but it's going to be applied to groups that are not associated with the President's life. We feel that we need to make a statement stating this is a rather open seat policy, and this fee is rather illegitimate. Second paragraph, 28 through 35, important points. Just kind of states that student groups have enough trouble just forming and keeping groups as is. Putting a fee on them is going to financially harm them. Really isn't going to do anything to help certainly. 37 through 40. It just states it's already been passed by Corporate Controller's Office. It is scheduled to be implemented in January 2009 to start the spring semester, based on what has been understood thus far. And we just feel that there is a need to make a strong student voice as quickly as possible. Also on 42 through 47, you look down there, it basically just says that UPUA feels that this fee is absolutely detrimental, especially on the basis that these commons area rec rooms are used to facilitate messages about what's going on campus, and especially harms groups, say like freshmen who are just kind of new to Penn State and learning about what's going on in Penn State for the first time. It kind of disrupts kind of the free flow of information. And 49 through, just look at 49 through 51, I guess. It just states that we feel that hopefully the language as it's written here isn't too hard on or harsh on ARHS. We just feel that they're inappropriately charging this fee. And if you turn on the next page, just 1 through 9, finishing up the nature of the situation. This fee goes directly to the Director of Housing based on what we understand about it. It kind of goes to administrators, it goes from the hands of students and the hands of administrators. There's no real kind of student oversight. Students, there's really no controlling interest, as we said down there on line 6. And moving on to the important part, the recommended course of action, 13 to 21. Basically, we are calling for this to be delayed, for there to be more consideration on this delay until proper documentation is provided. If you look, this right here, this is just given moved by Dr. Stanmore right before the meeting began. Sorry if you can't read it. Since it was getting right before the meeting, I had to rush down to make copies of it as quickly as I can. But this is really all the documentation we received on it thus far. It's just like a memo between offices there. And also, I think it's important just to include this little sentence. If you look at 19 through 21, we want to take precautions to make sure that there aren't any more facilities fees or fees like this anymore. Try to be as proactive in preventing these things, not as opposed to being reactive. The administrator saying, hey, we're going to charge this and us reacting to that, being proactive to prevent these things from happening in the future. Something that also my committee thought that would be good to recommend in 23 through 26, charging the executive board with maybe helping us find out more about this fee. After everything that you guys know about tonight, you might deem that to be necessary or unnecessary, so maybe leave that up to your discretion what you want to do with that. And might be the most important part of the document, the last 2 lines down there, 28 and 29. We would just like to know why this fee is necessary. I mean, I kind of, not sure if you guys would agree, but kind of got 2 sides of this. It's either one or the other. ARSH and students are trying to promote this for the sense of equality, and they feel that resident students are being harmed by non-resident select affiliate groups using what they consider to be their space. And I'm also hearing from the administration that it's part of cost recovery, and that cleanup costs, and if there's no fee generated, there's no revenue really being generated. I think that it's either kind of one or the other, not both. We would just like to get clarification kind of once and for all what this is, why it's necessary. So, sorry if I was a little long.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Mance?
I would also like the questions that I can't direct, if I could just direct them to either or Sam.
Okay, any questions for, if they will, Corey, Lohner, or Mance? Questions? Okay, thank you very much. Moving on, Representative Carson.
Try to keep it brief, seeing as our meetings seem to get longer and longer. There are a lot of issues afoot here. Living on campus, representing students on campus, and then I still consider myself as an at-large representative to represent the 13,000 on-campus students, all of whom are undergraduate students. And I think we always must remember our constituencies within this organization. UPUA is the official student government represented by the Board of Trustees, representing undergraduates on campus and off campus. ARSH does a great job dealing with the on-campus issues, but they only represent the interests of those on-campus students in the Res Life areas. Many organizations with members who live on campus are going to be, but that are not affiliated with Res Life, are going to be adversely affected by this fee. And if it does go to cost recovery, as was just pointed out to me, if each group were to use this once a year, let's say, if each group were to have to pay this fee once, $50 will average to, that's $35,000 a year. It's a little more than cost recovery, I think. I'm not an accountant, but that's my standpoint on it. I applaud Nick and his committee and his work. I know I've given him a little bit of a hard time. It's an important issue. Nick has gone to Diane Andrews and has been met with almost a deaf ear from, as he's told us. He's been given, as he would determine, and I would most certainly agree, the runaround. And so this document is finally taking a stand saying that this is the official government of the students and that you need to approach us and this fee must be delayed until proper information is conveyed to us. And I do not speak for ARSH, but I almost feel that ARSH is being used as a scapegoat by the administration. They're saying ARSH asked for this fee, and now if ARSH wants to overturn it, they can, but if they don't, then we're going to do it. It's not really up to ARSH. Too many times we've seen that it's not, in the end, up to the students, but rather the administration. And ARSH is a great group of students, many of whom I call friends. And I'm not really comfortable with the administration using them in that regard. And so I also strongly condemn that. And therefore, I strongly am in favor of this document as it stands. I think facilities did a great job, and I move that we pass it, pending the rest of the debate.
Representative Morrell? Any objections to yielding the floor? Okay.
Hi guys, I come to you from two perspectives. The first one would be from the perspective of service organizations on campus that a lot of times find themselves using space in the residence halls, Pollock, Cultural Lounge, and the other lounges. I can tell you that most service organizations are forced to have two separate bank accounts, one for the money that they collect in donations that has to be used for service purposes, and the other one for administrative purposes. I know that an average amount of money from an administrative account, which is even money that would be used to pay something like this fee, most service organizations would not be able to afford the fee maybe more than once or twice a semester. The other kind of insight that I want to share with you guys, I have been a Commons Desk employee for 3 years, and I'm a manager there. So I pretty much hear absolutely every single complaint there is to be heard when it comes to residence life. And while I'm not calling into question the complaints that ARSH has been receiving about whether or not these rooms are available or not, in my 3 years working as a Commons Desk, I have never had a student come up to me and go like, oh darn, there's a program there and I really wanted to do X, Y, or Z. Now, while this is cool and I'm really glad to see the group of students really like rallying around an idea, don't just stop at passing this, make sure you as the UPUA submit an alternative solution, because otherwise this is all talk and no action. And you guys are here for action. So I just wanted to offer those 4 cents worth of thoughts and encourage you, don't stop just here. Offer an alternative solution. I'm going to throw this one out there. Maybe an alternative solution would be that non-residents groups are only allowed to reserve a space 1 or 2 weeks from the event. Then residents organizations can do it up to 4 weeks ahead of time, giving them first dibs, but not charging a fee. Just throwing that out there, but please, if you're going to pass this, come up with an alternative solution.
Representative Miller.
I actually agree with what Ricardo said in a lot of senses. I feel like the recommended course of action is too vague and offers a lot of good philosophical ideas of discussion that needs to happen, but I don't think it says anything solid about, okay, so we get these groups to talk about it, but then what? Something has to come out of it. And I don't know if it's, I do think that we need to offer an alternative plan. I think that there's ways for both Arsh and the administration, if they are looking to rectify fairness to residents groups over non-residents groups, I think there's a way to do that without a fee, and I think that we should draft something along those lines. And I also think that within what's recommended here, especially about getting a collective voice of student groups on campus, and they should be charged to produce something in writing, a report, an opinion, whether it be a majority opinion, a dissenting opinion, like a Supreme Court. I don't know, but I think we need to have documents in writing. That's how this problem started, and we don't want to continue it without, with just these conversations that don't really go anywhere.
Gavin, do you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you for what you both said. Ricardo, yeah, I definitely agree with Ricardo. I see this as kind of a step one as far as the process. The recommended course of action, it could be stronger, but I also think that we didn't even have this document to begin with, and there's definitely some further conversations that need to be had. I think that, if we pass this document, that it's definitely, I can see maybe a couple of changes to make it a little bit stronger, but the general spirit of it is there, and I think that it's worth passing, but I also think that there's a lot more to be done as far as how we could improve the process that may currently exist. And I think that if Arsh is receptive, that there definitely could be some conversations that had. So this isn't UP-Way versus Arsh. This is UP-Way and Arsh coming to an understanding where all students are able to use this facility. Because charging a fee when it's not even going back to Arsh, or not even going back to the on-campus groups, but going to the residence lake pot, I don't see as really a deterrent. I see that as just kind of aiding people's current cash flow. That being said, this is a good document. There's a lot that needs to be done. Further conversations, and I really think that we need to focus on the fact that Arsh and us can probably come to an understanding on this, and that's hopefully will be the next step.
Representative Lucas?
I'd like to thank the Facilities Committee for coming up with this document. It's better than the version that came before it. But I will actually urge people to vote against this on the following grounds. As we've heard from two speakers today, this fee is not to generate money, it's to keep students out of the space. It's not to generate funds for anything at all, basically just to keep groups out of this space. So I would propose that we say to Arsh or whomever is supportive of this fee, no fee in Space for All, or just prohibit groups out of those spaces. Just actually do what you want to do and prohibit student groups that aren't affiliated with Arsh or residence halls to not use that space. To take a stand that isn't monetary. So if what they want is to take them out of that space, let's pressure them to say that to student groups. And if this facility fee, I'm sorry, if this fee continues, I think an action we can consider is organizing a boycott of these spaces on the grounds that, if student groups are going to be charged to use these spaces, we'll find other places for them to have their events.
Karen?
Steve, I understand your passion, and I do hear your argument. I think it's definitely noted, and I definitely hear you're saying that these fees do continue, boycotts, that type of stuff, and maybe that is a course of action. But I don't think voting no to saying that we're against this and there needs to be more information is necessarily the best course of action. Again, this is kind of, while this isn't the best document, it's definitely an improvement, and we do need to learn a lot more information before we can make a kind of a definitive statement. While this is a recommended course of action, we say it should be delayed. I honestly feel that we couldn't come to some sort of understanding, and in the future, if it comes to be that we can't come to any type of understanding, then I think we can take the actions that you speak of. But at this point, just to jump to that, while it says a strong stand, it's not really sounding much.
Representative Lohner?
I definitely see what Representative Lucas was saying, but and also what Representative Miller was saying. But I feel that the crux of this is that we're looking for this fee, for the implementation of this fee to be delayed, and that's going to allow the time for either the eventual boycott of the space, hypothetically, or coming up with a plan to actually avert this and have another way to change how these rooms are allocated. But really, the time is of the essence right now. I believe what we heard, this fee is going to happen in January of 2009, so 40 days perhaps. And that's not a lot of time to come up with a solution, an alternative solution, like Dr. Lada proposed that we could get to Parker and Arch in general. And another thing I wanted to address was that I think, especially in the question and answer part of tonight, there was a lot of talk about Arch being able to allow groups to not pay this. There would be ways where they would say, you don't have to pay this fee, you'll partner with us, we'll ally with us for this event, and we'll co-sponsor, and you won't need to pay this fee. But I think that we're looking at Parker's administration in Arch, and maybe that's going to happen a lot, and maybe groups aren't going to have to pay this. But in 5 years down the line, if this stays, if this happens and stays in place, maybe Arch is not going to partner with any groups. Maybe they'll never partner with a group again, and there will be no more co-sponsoring groups will be having to pay this all the time. So I think the real danger of this is that, as with any fee, is that maybe it sounds good now, but if you're instituting it forever, who knows what it's going to be in 5, 10, 15 years.
Further discussion? Representative Lucas?
I think I'm in agreement with most people here. I just have, I guess, more radical stance. But another thing about this document, it is very personal to Arch. It's saying it's rather reckless for Arch, a student group, to support charging other students. I mean, we're going after Arch in this document for the sake of cooperation and working with Arch. I don't know if it's in our best interest to pass this document. While I understand we want to delay the implementation of this fee, I do think just passing this because of that, despite the fact we know it's going to be implemented, and having that criticism in there, I think that might not be the best thing for you to do.
Further discussion? Representative Carson?
Steve, I happen to agree with you that we could use some more forceful language in here. This is a bigger issue. I think this is one of the biggest issues we've faced thus far as an assembly. But the time has come for this, and we're running out of it. Whether it's going before the Board of Trustees or not, I really don't think makes a darn difference. Because this fee's been on the books, and we're not getting the press coverage it needs. And so I would encourage you actually to make an amendment if you think that clause needs to be struck, because I think that many representatives may agree with you here. But I think that now's the time to get this fee passed. I know facilities really worked hard to get this out to us now because they see the importance of getting it out now. And anything that you think needs to be changed based on the new information we've been told, I would encourage your amendment to be made.
Further discussion? Representative Quinn?
Yeah, okay, so, for the record, I'm going to see, I didn't want to address it, but the matter of doing this is completely wrong. Our first reaction when we heard about the fee was to go into attack, okay? Not as harsh we elegant. As we saw earlier tonight, both sides are just thinking like just 100%. I don't think this resolution will help the situation. Honestly, this should not be a big issue. This should be rather easily resolved because, as I was saying, it's not about money, it's about, anyway, sorry. Passing this resolution in its current form, I think will only make the situation worse. This could be turned into a networking opportunity. The PQA where councils is function. I mean, this is not the proper way to handle the situation. And if we can't handle small things like this, if we have things like this in a huge debacles, like, how are we going to handle bigger issues? You know?
Further discussion? Representative Smith?
Yeah, I don't want it to be come across. Nick's first and foremost knows that I worked with him a lot of the way through this. I've gone with him to several meetings and stuff with him about this. But I also have to side with Steve. I think that if at least if we take out, and somewhat of what President said, that if we take out the stuff about Arch specifically, I'll be more likely to vote in favor of this. As it stands now, I don't. but where I disagree, Representative Quinn, is that, that it should be handled behind closed doors. At various points, if you go back in time to, even as far as the large expansion of the health rental fees in the late 90s, that were also committed, and student government got involved then, and they are revolting back in virtually everything. So it is our responsibility, and I think if we take out the information about ARCH, that we can vote.
Representative Carson?
I'd like to make a motion to amend, to remove from lines, on page 1, to remove from lines 49 to 51 up to the word entitled, that entire part of the paragraph. So it would, that paragraph would then begin with the money made from such a fee will go to Penn State through the Director of Housing and out of the hands of students who pay it. Also to remove from, on the second page, from 3 to 6, where it says, it is also rather reckless of ARCH, a student group to support charging other students money that will ultimately end up in the hands of administrators, university officials, that entire part, then linking distributed to in addition. Then on line 7, clarifying what ARCH is with the Association of Residents All Students, and then in parentheses, ARCH, just to tighten up the document. The reason for this is Parker was gracious enough to join us this evening, to stand up to our barrage of questioning. ARCH is another group of students, and they have the goals in mind that are right for their constituency. They're not out to get anyone. And so I think we just need to consider that, and that's my motion.
Objection?
There's a second to that motion? Any objections? Okay, would you like to present your case?
I just feel it accurately represents what happened.
Further discussion on this? Representative Lombard?
Even though it may accurately describe what happened, it's still not very good for us to be portraying this kind of sentiment to someone else that is supposedly representing the same students that we also represent. So I don't feel it would be in our best interest to do that, even though it may represent our true feelings.
Further discussion on this amendment? Yes. Secretary, do you have it?
Yeah, I mean, tell me if there's anything extra. Remove from lines 45 to 51 up to the word entitled from the paragraph.
49.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's what I wrote down. I'm so sorry. 49 to 51 up to the word entitled from the paragraph. Paragraph will begin with the money made. Also to remove from 3 to 6 on the second page, and linking distributed to in addition. That's all I have written down. I got a little lost in the parentheses.
Yeah, linking, and then just the one more on line 7, which will obviously move up. Just adding the Association of Residents All Students, and then in parentheses ARCH, since we removed the reference before.
Okay.
That's the only other part.
So on line 7, so line 6 would, in addition, et cetera, et cetera. Line 7, fee by Association of Residents Hall Students, parentheses ARCH, or any other student group, period, continue. Okay, further discussion, Representative Carson?
As I've said tonight, I'm a member of ARCH, and I am a little bit bothered by this. Whether it is a statement of what has occurred or not, I do not think it's the place of one group of students to condemn another group of students. There are other means to go about doing that. We are both student government organizations. We serve different purposes. We are both student government organizations that represent various constituencies with the right goals and the right purpose in mind. And whether it may be what has occurred, I do not think it has any place in this document.
No, I'm really glad you made that amendment, actually. While the spirit of this may be great, maybe warranted, it's not a smart idea ever to pit students against students. It really solves nothing. Having a major organization like ARCH against a major organization like UPUA, whether that's the case or not, but even implying it by putting it in writing, just doesn't make practical sense. A lot of what we talk about is really looking out for students on issues, whether constantly, as a body, we're dealing with different student issues. To then condemn and call them reckless and use language like that, I don't think that the authors meant to really go that far. But to use language like that in an official document really doesn't speak well about us as an organization. And I would really hope that we wouldn't allow for that type of language to be within an official resolution.
Representative Lohner?
As a co-author and co-sponsor of this, I think this amendment is appropriate. I'm not alienating our fellow writers here, but I guess when I was looking this over for the final time, I took it for granted that Arch wouldn't be offended by that. I hope they wouldn't be offended by that or left that in. I know it's harsh language, whether or not it's accurate. I think it is accurate, but I took it for granted that it would be offensive, and if it's not in there, it's not going to be offensive. If it's not in there, then I think it's appropriate to remove it.
Representative King?
Oh yeah, end debate on this.
Second.
Yeah, we're gonna, you can end debate on this amendment, and then we'll vote on the amendment, move on to further discussion on the resolution.
Yeah, so that's.
Okay, is there a second on any debate on this amendment? Any objections to any debate on this amendment? Okay, show of hands, affirmative for this amendment. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the amendment passes. Further discussion on resolution 14, or 15. Mr. Cavallo.
I have a few comments and then actually an amendment. I just want to say it's a little sad that every time Stan comes before the assembly, he's defending a fee or some other activity that this body greatly opposes. And I told her beforehand that we're going to get him back one time on good terms when he's not subject to hostile interrogation. I made that promise to him. He did laugh beforehand. But on a serious note, I did find it a little disconcerting that, and this really developed in the last week. UQA has been exploring this topic for, I would say, almost 3 months now. And it's really been in the last week that people have been directing us to ARSH, which I find very surprising. And I think that, as was alluded by Representative Karasik, that this is kind of a bait and switch attempt at ResLife. And I say that with a straight face. I'm very disappointed in the Office of Residence Life on a variety of issues, including trying to set up a meeting which took 2.5 weeks to set up, which was not the intention of the meeting. It was supposed to be just to answer a few questions, and it was delayed for almost 3 weeks. To the continual batting around from the Controller's Office to ResLife, the Controller's Office to ResLife for 2.5 months. Not once in which we were directed to ARSH. I spoke with ARSH several times, and I think that amendment just shows that there's no problem with ARSH. ARSH is a great organization, and they have the best intentions of their constituency. But this issue, in which Dr. Lana failed to mention, is a fee affecting all students. It's just not affecting on-campus students. The problem is on-campus students, and that's the issue. That's why ARSH justly brought this issue up. And I think they did act on the best of their constituents. But this is a fee that's affecting all students. In that respect, that's the role of this organization. So this bait and switch where now it's all ARSH, all questions have to go to ARSH, I think it's meant to drive a wedge between organizations. And I think this body just demonstrated that that's not going to work. We have the best intentions of working with ARSH, and I think we have decent relationships, and we've already had dialogue, constructive dialogue, I think, at least on my part, regarding this. I also think the concern that was raised by Representative Lucas is justified. In that, if the intention is simply just to ban student groups, then just ban student groups. I don't see why we're creating a class system among groups, and then also charging a fee where then now this money is not even going to ARSH. I would actually have less of a problem if it was going to ARSH. And I'm actually glad to see that ARSH has some authority in this round, which we were told blatantly by people like Diane Rogers, or Andrews, excuse me, in the Controller's Office, when I got an email from them that ARSH had no say in this. And I can actually forward those emails to you, Parker. So we've just been given the runaround for 3 months, and it's not ARSH's fault. we were told very early on that ours really had nothing to do with this, which is a little beyond the truth. And this was actually 2 years ago. This was proposed. So this was far beyond even ARSH's request. So there are other motives. But with that said, and really focusing debate, I think we're starting to focus debate a little bit. I just wanted to clarify those things. I do have an amendment, and I move to add to the document just line 31 starting. The amendment should read, the Assembly charges the UQA Facilities Committee in collaboration with ARSH to form a task force to address concerns in relation to this fee. During this task force, UQA calls upon ARSH to postpone the fee implementation in good faith negotiation. And this is really more of a challenge to residents' life than it is, ARSH. If we're going to work together on this, and I really do think we can, addressing these issues, address ARSH's concern and the student body as a whole. This is really a challenge to residents' life to give that authority to ARSH, if nothing else. So I think this will accomplish, one, it will solve a lot of our problems. I'm doing a brief introduction right now in terms of addressing how this is going to be implemented, and also to establish better relations with ARSH and actually get this get at the issue of this problem. And so that's the amendment, and
Can we repeat it, please?
Sure.
And also, is it line 31?
It's on the back. It's right in the recommended course of action.
It's a blank spot.
And the amendment is the Assembly charges the UQA Facilities Committee in collaboration with ARSH to form a task force to address concerns in relation to this fee. During the implementation of this task force, UQA calls upon ARSH to postpone the fee implementation in good faith negotiation.
Representative Karasik.
I'd like to yield the floor to Parker and pose a question to him, actually. Is that all right, Parker? Parker, is this something that, since you speak for ARSH, is this something that ARSH would be willing to consider? Would be willing to work with UQA on?
Yeah.
You didn't?
Representative Malloy seconds the amendment. Any objections to this amendment? Okay.
This is regarding the amendment.
All right. Is that fine? Okay. Discussion on the amendment, yield the floor. Go ahead.
Let me first say that I don't think from our standpoint that I can say this is the ideal solution. The ideal solution we would say, if UQA wants to be more involved with it, is let us go ahead in January, and we'll work with them as if we go along, and we'll give you updates. If you want weekly updates, we'll give it to you, and we can work out details as we go. If you are insistent that this organization just feels it's a crime to end all crimes starting in January, let me first give you a little bit of background information. Whenever ARSH voted on this I forget what the exact date was, there was a discussion about it should start in January or should it start during the summer. The reason we started in January was, I promise you, it was entirely good faith, because we felt that it would look very, I think the word was used, slimy, to start over the summer, because a lot of fees, for instance, the facilities fee was approved over the summer. This kind of fees that kind of slide in without lots of students knowing about happens over the summer, and we felt the only way to actually get the word out about the fee and to address problems while we're still in session would be to start in January. So with that in mind, I would say, again, it's not an ideal solution. However, I think we would be up for it with the understanding that ARSH, if you're convinced that ARSH has had the blinds pulled over them, and we actually work 8 and switched to use Ralph's language, then as long as you still say, you know what, after after working explicitly with students, if the students in ARSH still say at the end of the spring semester that we still feel strongly that this fee should be implemented, that you give us the autonomy to let us try it. And if that's with that understanding, then I'm supportive of it.
Thank you. Representative Miller?
I would support Ralph's amendment because I really feel like after hearing Cooney Parker and the ends that ARSH seems to be trying to achieve through implementing this fee, I really feel like there's probably a lot of different solutions that don't necessarily need a fee to achieve the same end. And I really feel like with more time and task force devoted to trying to figure out that solution, and Dr. Lala's word, both on tape and in minutes, that the administration is very willing to reopen this idea and reconsider it and possibly change it, I think that we could come up with a solution that doesn't include fees. So I am in support of it.
Further discussion on this amendment. Representative Plum?
This isn't exactly a discussion on the amendment. Parker, if I could ask you one more quick question, give one time to you afterwards. Would you be in agreement with something that would fall within the amendment, in my opinion,
but if an idea similar to the one that Mr. Flores posed earlier, if you needed to re-clarify what that was. Sure, can you do that, please?
Sure, the idea was that in the approval process, actually, the student organizations apply for space, that non-residence organizations have a window of a month prior to the date of their event, residence organizations, and then non-residence organizations then would have only 2 weeks prior. Then that as long as the residence organizations are planning ahead of time, and looking at a month as the healthy time window to plan an event, then that day wouldn't be blocked out.
I think that there would be unintentional harm in that, you know what I'm saying, so not to the residence hall groups, but to any groups. Imagine if you were a small group trying to plan for a location, say in East Game Room, and you can't book it until a week or 2 in advance. That puts a huge uncertainty while you're in the planning phase, and so I think that would unintentionally harm many student organizations, and so I don't think, at least thinking of, but put it here, I don't think I would be supportive of it, I don't think our students.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion on this amendment, Representative Lucas?
I commend Representative Kurosek and Representative Chair Fellow for these 2 amendments. I think they're important to this document on 2 grounds. I think the criticism of Arch directly was unwarranted at this time. And also I support this specific amendment because Arch can explain to the student body why they're not going to cooperate with UPUA after we charge them with this amendment. So I support it.
Is there a second on closing debate on this amendment?
Second.
Any objections to ending debate on this amendment? Okay, show of hands, affirmative on this amendment. Is everyone clear on the amendment on line 31 on the second page? Okay, affirmative. Okay, opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the amendment passes. Further discussion on the entire resolution 15. Representative Szymanski. Any objections to ending debate on resolution 15? Okay, roll call, Secretary.
Michael Aldinger.
Yes.
William Barr.
Yes.
Jim Byrne.
Yes.
Ralph Cavallo.
Yes.
Sarah Donnenberg. Hillary Gupta.
Yes.
Mark Cannon. Hubert Hines. Andrew Karasek.
Yes.
John King.
Yes.
Peter Corey.
Yes.
Sean Leonard.
Yes.
Daniel Lerch.
Yes.
Sam Lohner.
Yes.
Benjamin Lombard.
Yes.
Stephen Lucas. Nick Mance.
Yes.
Sean Malloy.
Yes.
Samantha Miller.
Yes.
Christopher Morrell. Christopher Knott.
Yes.
Ellie Ockelberg. Yes. Greg Plum. Bryant Pullen.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes. Kelly Potter.
Yes.
Megan Quinn.
Yes.
Christian Ragland.
Yes.
Amy Sanders.
Yes.
Carolyn Severie.
Yes.
Philip Slusser.
Yes.
Richard Tremansky.
Yes.
Colleen Smith.
Yes.
Matthew Smith.
Yes.
Michael Smith.
Yes.
Michael Wallace.
Yes.
Resolution 15 passes 35-0-0. Moving on to resolution 15. 16. I know, everyone. Funding requests for thought events. Do we have a motion to bring it to the floor? Okay. Second? Objections? 16. Incorrect. Okay, do we have an introduction on resolution 16?
Basically, as you all know, the subcommittee is planning a flag football fundraiser where all the proceeds will go to Vaughn. Basically, this past week we've been doing registration of teams, and the first week coming back for Thanksgiving we're doing registration of teams. We have not been able to advertise, so no teams have signed up yet as of today. And then also, because it will be December and because it will be a tournament and play will last at least more than 2 hours, probably 2 or 3, we have been contacting companies for food and hot drinks, and we were trying to get water as well as hot pans, which is the hand warmers, since it will be a December day. Unfortunately, we've only been able to get food and hot drink donations. If you look at the subcommittee report, you'll see that. So basically, this is just a resolution to allocate money to the subcommittee so we can do an advertisement, and then also, just in case we cannot secure donations for water, and just an advertisement. And I just want to note that, a very important note, that the money that is, if we, sorry, I just want to note that we will continue to seek donations for water and for hand warmers. And if we do secure donations for that, we will definitely, obviously, return that money directly towards the assembly, and we'll go right back to the town.
Any questions about bringing this to the floor? Everyone okay? Representative Smith?
Yeah, I was just wondering what the committee's vote on this was.
Sorry, I messed that up. It wasn't actually brought through programming, it's brought through for me and to goes to the board. I
Yes.
actually wrote this today, so I'm sorry.
So we need 2/3 to actually discuss this document. Okay, thank you. So at this time, are there any objections to bringing this to the floor for discussion? No? Okay, discussion on resolution 16. Or questions to Sean, Representative Leonard. Mr. Carvalho?
I just had a question about the numbers involved. How many students are currently going to be involved in a flag football, or is it just open to UPUA? I know I saw sign-up sheets and advertisements in the UPUA office for it, but I'm just a little unsure about it.
No, it's perfectly fine question to answer, obviously. We are trying to open this up to the entire student body, that is why we're asking money for advertisement. We could do some flyers, something like that, but we are looking to do something a little bit more than just wasting, or not wasting, but picking out things. And basically, we do want more people involved. Was there something important?
I asked if there are a specific number of people.
Yeah, sorry. As of right now, we do not have specific numbers because we have not been able to advertise for people to sign up, so no one has signed up. We are looking to get at least 20 teams, which would be 7 to 10 people per team, so you're looking at close to 200 people participating. And again, we did secure food, we secured pizza, pretzels, and hot chocolate and coffee, so we're just trying to get water and also advertising.
I have a question. What's the status in collaborating with Thon directly? Were you ever pursuing that?
What do you mean?
Like, did you contact anyone from Thon?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just gonna keep saying it.
Okay.
Okay, we actually did, through Benji, he helped me contact the overall committee of Thon. They love what we're doing, and there are actually individual committees that are very excited what they're doing. They're going to be starting their own flag football teams to participate. But the overall committee will be in Philadelphia, talking at a Smeal College business event, so they're not going to be able to attend our event that day. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Follow-up question for me. So individual committees that are directly involved in Thon, they will be signing up for what you're putting on.
To sign it like a team, and they're going to play as a team.
So technically you don't have anyone signed up, but perhaps you do?
Well, nobody has officially signed up yet. That's what I'm listening
Okay. Representative Lombard?
I just want to follow up with that. It's been announced through different committees within Thon that there's this football program coming up. And a lot of times it takes time for them to have a committee meeting and things like that to organize that. And also, the overalls for Thon are going to be on some kind of meeting that weekend in Philadelphia. So not all of them can be there, but I've been told that there may be a few that are still in the State College area that will be able to make it out, participate, and make a speech.
Representative Morel?
You guys created a Facebook group, right?
Yes, we did.
How many people are in that?
There are 100 or so.
Okay. Representative Malloy?
So I just want to be clear that this is now an officially sanctioned Thon event.
Yeah, it's been an officially sanctioned on event for weeks.
Just making sure that we had contact with the Chinese.
Oh yeah, no, it's, we have the Help-a-thon, it's been recognized by Thon as an alternative fundraiser for almost a month. It was just a matter of actually securing the Help-a-thon, that's all taken care of.
Representative Donenberg?
Well, how do you use Gavin as a resource? Because Gavin knows a lot of student, like the presidents, student leaders, and student organizations, and has a lot of access to serve and things like that, so that can give you a cheap, free way of advertising. So have you tried that?
We will be sending out an email to listservs, the president listservs, student leadership listservs, and we will try and get student organizations to send out listservs. Unfortunately, how effective do you think that is? Do you listen to the listserv announcements that I send out? That just as an example, I'm not trying to say anything, but that's not a very effective way to get people to advertise.
No, I think that's definitely, I think there's a few of us that could really, a few of us in here that have a lot of context that could really further this along, and we haven't yet. So thank you, Sarah. But I also think that this is, some funding is also necessary just for the overall, what are the hand warmers. And really, if this money isn't spent, it would go back into the pot, correct?
It will definitely go right back.
Mr. Carvello?
I yield the floor to our lovely secretary.
Just a suggestion,
Yes.
there's a Thon Facebook group that the PR committee is in charge of, and they can send out events, like they're actually in charge of all the Thon events that get sent out, and they have like 1 million friends. So you could, like, seriously.
They haven't responded yet.
Okay. That's all.
Okay, further questions for Mr. Leonard? Representative Miller?
What would the small advertising campaign?
We have tossed around some ideas of maybe buying, like on the last week of registration, or even during Thanksgiving, doing Facebook ad campaign. It's relatively inexpensive. We can set the price of how much we want to spend and how many people can actually see it. And more specifically, it will be targeted directly towards students at University Park, freshmen, sophomores, seniors that actually are looking into already doing that with my own money. And I also want to say that I've already contributed a lot with my own money towards this, and that's why I'm seeking a UPA, since this is an event on behalf of UPA for Thon. But there are others.
Okay, that's a lot of time for questions. Let's move into to discussion. There's no pressing questions. Discussion resolution 16, policy net 16, resolution 16. Representative Malloy.
Yeah, Gavin touched on a good point that how many people in this room are in another organization on campus? You just raise your hand. All right, exactly. We as a body, as individuals, haven't exerted the power we have to get our own group coming together. So I would urge that you all organize these things over Thanksgiving break and urge you to pass this in order to make this happen. College Democrats, if the Republicans accept, we'll be pushing the college Republicans. John is working out. So get your organizations involved so we can not only make this successful for Thon, but also for UPUA. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion. Representative Morrell.
Say girls stay with you building a team of athletes.
Appreciate that.
Okay, further discussion. Gavin, Kieran.
No, I just think that we should, I mean, Sean, as you said, has put a lot of time in, and he might have put up his own funds, which I wish he didn't, but I definitely think that the time and effort that he's put into it, we need to at least give him some funds to make this successful. And also remember that this is the UPUA name out there associated with this, so say yes.
Representative Miller.
Motion to end debate.
Second.
Any objections to ending debate? Representative Ockelberg.
Yeah, I have some comments to make about extending like how much money we're allocating. I think that we can pump a little bit more into that.
Okay.
I'm just like motioning to not end debate.
Okay, you're objecting to ending debate.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can
Sorry.
say that.
Stop talking to me. Okay. Raise your hand if you affirmative on ending debate. Representative Quinn, is that,
If you want to end debate.
ending debate, raise your hand.
Okay, could you please raise your hands, Tom?
I don't understand what's going on, so they're ending debate.
I wanted to not end debate so we could give you more money.
Just trying to lowball it.
Never little, never little.
Motion to reconsider.
Motion to
Motion to reconsider.
I did.
Hillary did. I second Hillary.
Any objections to reconsidering?
This will be re-entering debate, so there could be an amendment to increase the funding. Which would be perplexing that 27 people voted to end debate knowing that was the objection, but it's...
It's a very confusing time, Mr. Travis.
Okay, objections to considering? Okay. Representative Overberg, can you guys?
I would like to first ask you how much money would you like?
I am going to suggest $250.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to change line 24 to read, will allocate $300 to the subcommittee.
All right. I'm not going to enter debate because I know I've done that one too many times. But can we just maybe, I think maybe a lot of people might be thinking a little justification on the 250 and why we jumped up to 3?
Because he always lowballs.
Okay.
Second. All right. If you want me to justify the $250, I'm going to do that.
Okay. Representative Smith?
I'm sorry. This is confusing.
Okay, is there a second on that amendment?
I didn't hear the amendment.
$300 instead of $100.
Second.
Okay, any objections to that
Can we come
amendment?
to order? Who is this amendment coming from?
Representative Overberg?
Okay, well,
She's right next to you.
I thought you recognized Representative Smith.
Yeah, you did say so.
No, he said he doesn't want to speak right now. But he
Okay,
still
well.
stands up. We're a little goofy right now, I know. Okay, so any objections to the amendment of $300?
I object.
Okay, would you like to speak on that objection?
Why are you so parsimonious?
Representative Smith?
Alright, well, even though Ralph verbally objected, I mean, I hate to be Scrooge, but again, I'd like to bullet on it. Basically, from the beginning, I voted to close debate originally on this. I thought I will let $100 slide, whatever. I'm not going to be really stingy about it, but we just can't start throwing numbers. There's no wording about where this money's coming from. Is it coming out of the executive budget? Is it coming out of the overall budget? Why not 15,000? Why not 20,000? It doesn't make any sense. There's no prices. My committee had hard numbers for our catering, invitations, everything. We backed up it, and this just says I just want some money. So I do object to raising.
Further discussion on this amendment, Representative Gupta?
I think there's a huge difference in $15,000 and $300. If they're advertising to the student body, you can't really do it with $100, so I think $300 is fine.
Representative Carrison?
I actually will yield the floor to Representative Leonard with requesting. Okay, then I have a question for Representative Leonard. Could you just provide a justification for the increase from 100 to 300?
That is exactly what I would like to do.
Thank you.
Well, actually, $250 was what I originally requested, what I thought I would suggest. Not only because then we can do, I'm sorry, $250, but I guess I can talk about $300. It's going to allow us to buy hand warmers, which are $24.99 for a thing, which has 40 hand warmers in there. If we have, sorry, I don't know, for a case of 40 hand warmers, it is $24.99. It's the lowest price I saw of that. I know at Walmart it's a little bit more expensive than that. If you wanted the actual prices, I didn't include that in there, I'm sorry. And in a case of water, 24-pack, again, can range anywhere from $3 to $4 or $5. And if we have over 200 people competing, I don't think one bottle of water is going to be enough. I'm not doing the math right now. But as you can see, that's exactly why we moved it. Plus the campaign itself, trying to advertise it, I would like to do more than, rely on Facebook. But I'm actually really cynical when it comes to passing legislation in here, as I've seen with homecoming candy. So that is exactly why I lowballed it, hoping that I can get at least that and, make do and have the time I want. But, all right.
Representative Mance?
Believe me, as someone who believes from a standpoint that government should spend as little money as possible, I am in favor of this amendment because A, I feel that Mr. Leonard has put a lot of time and energy into this and we should support him on it. And B, he always lowballs these things. He probably needs more in the neighborhood of $500 to $1,000. So I ask you all to support this. Thank you.
Representative Hines?
I have a question. You know, at the football games, they have the special presentation and the announcement. Is there any way we can just get an announcement made during the game that we be pairing with bonds to have a flag football game? Because with all the students there, you have more than 200 people that we wanted to sign up. Maybe we can get that done?
Yes, we can. Do we have somebody else? Representative Leonard, Representative Lombard? Would anyone like to answer this question that might have expertise in this? Yeah, Representative Hines?
I was wondering if we can get an announcement made on the football games that we will be paired up with bonds to have a flag football game. Because I figured if we had more than 200 people at the game, we was willing to pay, come out and support that.
Well, we have 2 days to make that happen, so.
I can try and work on it. I'm sure between Gavin and everyone in here, we can try and make some phone calls, but 2 days ahead of time might not be able to.
Representative Morrell?
I can't guarantee anything, but through our esteemed alumni, Tom Shakely, the president and general manager of Line 9.7, which has official coverage of all radio stations, of all football games. So I'm sure, and they do, they have public service announcements free of charge. So I'm sure if we go to Tom and say, hey, can you help us out in 30 seconds? I'm also employed at the line, so I can tell you where I guess. Yeah, we can talk to Tom.
Let's stick to the amendment. Representative Lurch?
Representative Leonard, I really appreciate all the hard work and effort that you put into this. However, I do have a question. Why do you need money for hand warmers? Gloves, in my opinion, are suffice. I mean, I'm just going from the opinion that it's going to be cold. That's kind of logistical. If someone doesn't bring gloves, it's their own hands. I mean, they're there to play football and donate money to Bond. Why are we providing something that just, could keep our costs down, that's kind of logistical for the rest of the student body?
Well, you are right.
Did everyone on this side of the room hear that? Okay.
You're right to bring that concern up, but I believe that, it is going to be the summer day, and playing football with gloves on is not going to work. And of course, you have to also think about how effective gloves will be. With hand warmers, they can, quickly just hold it, they can keep it in their pockets, in between, playing. You can just take it out and quickly warm their hands up. It wasn't much bad, but gloves you have to put on, take off.
All right, just to clarify, there's nothing about that really in here. We're just debating on the amendment of $300. Representative Wallace?
I think we should just give him $300. He already spent money himself, so I mean, really, between 300 and 1. He lowballed it in the first place.
Hold on. Representative Plum?
Alright, I just want to say thank you so much for putting together a thought team for UPUA. It was due time that UPUA had a thought team. I myself am very involved with Thon, president of a large Thon organization. I love what you're doing. That being said, I didn't think $300 is unnecessary because I think most of the costs do entail, for example, advertising. I think they come from people and not from money. For example, if Greg Thomas put out the word, there's going to be flag football, everyone would know. I'm sure you've already tried all these, okay, I don't know that you've tried all these things. And also in terms of water, you to buy a water bottle for every single person who's going to play flag football. I'm sure they can get coolers of water for free. That would be much more cost effective. So while I applaud your efforts, I think there are, one or two strategic changes could greatly reduce the amount you need to spend was spent. Because you could get 160 hand warmers with 100 you got.
There's a motion on the floor that's been seconded.
Okay, any objections to ending debate on the amendment? Representative Szymanski, is that an objection?
I just wanted a quick point where how much money is it that UQA has right now, all in all?
Treasurer?
Unrestricted, $1,126, and the stopgap, $36,811. That's from one of those two sources where this money would come from.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Karen, do you have a comment?
Yeah, this week at steering committee, we also went over,
I'm sorry.
well, I'm just explaining the budget, so that further understanding of
That
that.
was an objection. So we're on in debate on the amendment.
Representative Gray?
No, he objected on the motion that was on the floor to end debate.
Sorry.
Okay, so all those show of hands, affirmative, ending debate on this amendment of $300. Please raise your hand. Objections? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. All those in favor of the $300, the amendment, please raise your hand. Affirmative of $300. Okay, the amendment passes. Representative Karasik?
I yield the floor to President Karen.
Thank you. I do just want to kind of clarify that budget question a little bit more. This week at steering committee, I submitted to everyone, all the chairs, basically how the breakdown of how the money was originally allocated for the discussion. This week they're going to come back. They're going to go back to the committees. They're supposed to go back to the committees to go over the amount and make sure that it was the proper amount that's needed. The basic breakdown you should receive from your committee chair, and if for some reason that doesn't happen, I'd be happy to send it out to, resend it out to everyone so that they have the understanding. There would be, with the allocation, there would be about $3,500 discretionary from that isn't given to anybody, so that if there is a bigger issue, you need extra funding, that you can come back to the assembly. But the gist of it would be that we break it down into each committee would have their own budget, and the executive cabinet would have their own budget. Legal affairs would have their own budget, which we already gave to them, and the board of arbitration would have their own budget, which is in there as well. So that is how it's set up, and there's still an extra $3,500 after allocating that for matters such as this, which really don't fall into any committee. So.
Further discussion on the entire resolution? Representative Malloy?
Motion to close the same. Second.
Any objections to ending debate on this resolution? Okay, roll call, Secretary.
Michael Oliver. William Barr.
Yes.
Jim Byrne.
Yes.
Rob Chavello. Sarah Donenberg. Hillary Gupta.
Yes.
Mark Cannon.
Yes.
Hubert Hines. Andrew Karasik.
Yes.
John King.
Yes.
Peter Corey.
Yes.
Sean Leonard.
Yes.
Daniel Lurch.
Yes.
Sam Lohner. Benjamin Lombard.
Yes.
You said yes.
Yes.
Stephen Lucas. Nick Mantz.
Yes.
Sean Malloy.
Yes.
Samantha Miller.
Abstain.
Christopher Moreau.
Yes.
Christopher Knopf.
Yes.
Ellie Okelberg. Yes. Greg Plum. Bryant Poland.
Yes.
Kelly Potter.
Yes.
Megan Quinn. Christian Ragland. Amy Sanders. Carolyn Severi.
Yes.
Philip Slusser.
Yes.
Richard Tremansky.
No.
Colleen Smith. Yes. Matthew Smith.
No.
Michael Smith.
Yes.
Michael Wallace.
kids just died.
So 27.
Okay, the resolution passes 25-3.
I'm sorry, what was the totals again?
25-3-7. Okay. All right, we also have policy 9. Policy 9 to be brought to the floor by 2/3.
I move to bring policy 9.
Any objections to bringing policy?
How is this a policy and not a resolution?
What?
How is this a policy and not a resolution?
It deals with an internal matter, requesting funding for a specific internal event.
Okay.
You're right in the fact that I guess it doesn't amend procedures and codes, so it probably should be labeled as a resolution. That's more for accounting purposes.
Okay, just curious, thank you.
Okay, so it's resolution 17.
Thank you.
Any objections to bringing this to the floor? There was a second. So, any objections? Okay, discussion on resolution 17. Would you like an introduction, Mr. King?
To begin with, there's a lot that has been brought to the floor tonight by 2/3. I think we need to get away from that. I think that in the past, we really started off really well getting this out, and we had a really good stretch where every document was in people's email box 3 days before. To bring everything to the floor by 2/3, and yeah, I know I'm a sponsor of this, but this kind of came up, but this is a trend that myself included we need to get away from, because just throwing things down people's throat and all these amendments and questions, these are things that could have been hashed out before, or and debate could have gone a lot smoother. So that being said, I'll introduce the resolution. This is needed for the flower sale, which the UPA Business Department is going to do. They need flyers and quarter sheets to be placed in student mailboxes. That is the reasoning for $60. Having done campaigns such as putting flyers in mailboxes, $60 should be adequate. And any money not spent will be returned to the UPA account. The only thing that is missing from this document is that this will be coming from the executive cabinet budget, so I asked that somebody amend that. And the funds from this were originally going to go into our unrestricted, but realizing that we now have to stopgap funding and working on long-term funding, and after conversations, we decided that it would be best to donate it to a cause, which I left up to the business department, and they felt that the Leukemia Foundation was a strong source.
Questions for Mr. Kierans? Representative Lohner?
Just for clarity's sake for the assembly, what gives you the impression that we're not going to be in monetary trouble in the spring semester soon?
Well, there's 36,000 that you guys did a year. I do have a strong impression that the division of UPA, the division of GSA are on the same path. The division of student affairs are really working towards making sure that we get this long-term funding. I would have liked that if we had it by now, but I also don't want to see our business department caught up in fundraising efforts. I don't believe we as a body should really ever be in fundraising efforts. I see the business department, business and marketing department, one going towards marketing certain campaigns such as the elections down the line, but also towards running bigger operations. For instance, there's been talk that I'm looking into having a late night bus service on like Fullerton buses that's been thrown out there. There's also been talk of last year there's an off-campus CBO plan that's also been talked about that being thrown back out there. These aren't formative things at all, but it's these type of big ideas that I want to see them start going into. Because if we're just doing mom and pop fundraising for a couple $100, one, it's a waste of our time, and two, it's a waste of the talent that we do have in the cabinet. So that's my goal.
Other questions for Mr. Kierans? Okay. Further discussion on policy 9, Representative Miller? Resolution 17.
I I move to amend line 6 to read from the UQA executive cabinet budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any objections to that amendment?
Point of order, should that just be a friendly amendment, doesn't pass?
It can be, but if there's no other objections, there's really no need to do that. Okay, any objections to that? Okay, further discussion on resolution 17. Representative Lohner. Any objections to any debate on resolution 17? Okay, if there are no objections at this time, move on to roll call vote. Secretary?
Michael Aldinger.
Yes.
William Barr.
Yes.
Jim Burns.
Yes.
Ralph Cavello.
Yes.
Sarah Donenberg. Hillary Gupta.
Yes.
Mark Cannon. Hubert Hines. Andrew Karasek.
Yes.
John Kay.
Yes.
Peter Corey. Sean Leonard, sorry.
Yes.
Daniel Lurch.
Yes.
Sam Walner.
Yes.
Benjamin Lombard. Stephen Lucas. Nick Mann.
Yes.
Sean Malloy. Samantha Miller. Christopher Morrell. Christopher Knott. Ellie Ogelberg.
Yes.
Greg Plum. Brian Poland.
Yes.
Kelly Potter. Megan Quinn. Sorry, my thing's been hurt. Christian Ragland. Amy Sanders.
Yes.
Carolyn Severi.
Yes.
Philip Slusser. Richard Tremansky. Colleen Smith. Yes. Matthew Smith. Michael Smith. Michael Wallace.
Resolution 17 passes 3302. Moving on in the agenda. Liaison reports. Graduate Student Association, Joanne Olson. She is excused this evening. Moving on to ARSH, Andrew Kuntz. He just stepped out of the room. Yeah, I saw, yeah. Moving on to item number 10, report by the association directors and staff. It's really unnecessary for all of the directors to speak tonight because for the first time we have a formal compiled effective board report. Mr. Anderson, if you'd like to say anything, go ahead.
I think I'll do you all a favor by not saying anything. We'll take questions.
So if there are any questions directly, you can ask one of the directors specifically. Go ahead.
Sorry guys, just one quick thing that I wasn't able to include in my report. As Gavin mentioned last week, I will be resigning at the end of the semester. With that being said, we are actively looking for a replacement to fill my role come springtime. So if you guys have any suggestions of anyone you think would be a good person to fill the role, definitely reach out to me and let me know. They don't have to be an expert with dealing with ASA or anything like that. If they have experience, that's great, but it's not necessary. So definitely if you have anyone in mind, definitely let me know. Thanks.
So are there any questions for any of the directors? Representative Lombard?
I was wondering, how the cultural fair is going, or any cultural fair through testimony for?
Yes, Cindy is absent tonight.
I haven't talked to her since it began. She was really excited about it Sunday, but I think she's actually doing something with that today. It was running throughout the week, so I'm not sure myself. Gavin apparently knows.
Yeah, they have a table at all the events, and they made these little brochures, flyers for more for the week. So I really don't know what they're doing as a committee. So that's all I see.
Any other questions for any of the directors? Do you have something to say? Okay.
Well, I do understand that the meetings get long, the shorter we can make them. I think it's a little bit insulting for us to sit here through the entire meeting, not have speaking privileges, and then have to celebrate that we're not going to be speaking to you guys and give you an update. So just I thought the celebration was kind of insulting. But I do have an update that's not written down there. Either the first or the second week of December, we're actually going to have a service project for you guys to actually do. It's either going to be Meals on Wheels bags or tray favors that we'll be taking them to Mount Mini Medical Center for them to be done. Also, whatever doesn't get finished, if it's the first or second week of December, will be left in the UPUA office for either you guys or your friends to come and just take a study break during finals week, just to get your minds up of academics. But I mean, I understand that the shorter the meetings, the better, but that was kind of insulting.
Any other questions, Representative Leonard?
Sorry, not a really question, I'm gonna go anyway. I know as far as I was clapping because we had a full executive board the first time, I think that's why I was clapping, so just to clarify.
Any other questions for executive board directors? Or did they have anything that it's really pressing? Okay. All right, moving on to committee reports. Same deal here, Mr. Carvalho.
A report was submitted that outlines everything. We should be having a constitutional amendment coming to the floor next Wednesday regarding the ad hoc committee. That's the highlight. Also, I do think that something needs to be worked out, and we're going to delay this. We are going to delay this. I'm saying ID's pretty packed right now with things to do, but I'll be working on this in conjunction with ID about getting down some budgeting procedures. And as a reminder, representatives, bringing something to the floor by 2/3, we label it as emergency. The proper way is to go through committee and have these issues brought up in your committee, and to be very diligent in especially funding. So keep that in mind when you're bringing things through. If it takes another week, I know some things are emergency, but we're definitely going to get some concrete procedures in place regarding budgeting and so forth. This is kind of the first year, so I guess bear with us. But there's definitely need for that. I'll stand for questions.
Questions? Representative Malloy?
SOCC.
Thank you. That was the most important thing of the entire evening, and I only wrote down one thing. Very quickly, I have the signed agreement. SOC officially signed today that they will be merging with UPUA, becoming the UPUA Board of Arbitration. What's really great is that it shows that student leaders still want authority in the realm of these areas that kind of have been taken away from them. And really this is a pledged agreement to basically empower the Board of Arbitration, obviously the current members of SOCC, with a greater role in the procedures of student organizations and developing and really owning that procedural outline, as well as registering student groups and a greater input in a lot of those areas. I am also writing, as I said there, a proposal to Judicial Affairs to also incorporate the UPUA Board of Arbitration. And we're actually waiting on our advisor, Mary, and Barry to give a concrete set of kind of mandates of requirements to transfer this authority over to the UPUA Board of Arbitration. I think we're making great progress, and if anyone wants to see it, the actual agreement that was signed, then more than welcome to see it.
Any other questions for Mr. Carvalho or the other committee chairs? Representative Vance?
Just a question, Mr. Carvalho. Briefly, the Taste of Penn State program, is that actually ran through Line Ambassadors? I don't know.
Representative Miller, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, Taste of Penn State was run by the University Relations Committee of the Penn State Line Ambassadors as a way to reach out to student leaders from all the different sectors at University Park and have them come together to discuss various
Thank you.
Okay, any other things specific to steering for Mr. Carvalho? Anything pressing for internal development? Representative Lucas?
Actually, I was going to ask about the safety.
Yeah, something, if it's regarding internal development, then that's fine.
What do you want?
SAFC.
You want me to talk about SAFC development? Okay. I was asked by President Gibbs to sit in on, to be his proxy at SAFB subcommittee meetings. The SAFB Student Activity Fee Board broke up into subcommittees in order to address issues with UPAC and student funding. And with that, we are currently taking a proposal as a working document to our subcommittee meeting tomorrow to UPAC that would potentially propose bringing UPAC under both GSA and UPUA, giving both organizations respective policy controls over their various constituencies, having the funding for UPAC actually be discharged by the assemblies of the two various organizations. And so that's where we're looking right now, and that will be going before the SAFB on December 5th. In addition, I'd like to commend, going into my report, if I may, I'd like to commend Ralph, Gavin, and everyone else involved in SOCC. We've been hearing about it for a while, so glad to hear it finally happened. Let me know about Board of Arbitration stuff. Elections Commission is still going on. If you have any opinions on the Elections Code, please let us know. And that's all from me.
Anything else pressing regarding internal development? Representative Smith?
Sorry, Andrew, on here, it's talking about being in the process of selecting commissioners for 2009, and also we propose passing, I assume bringing the elections code up by next, soon come back to Thanksgiving, since our last meeting.
No. Our proposal is that we have elections commissioners appointed by the committee before we break for winter, and having the code passed when we come back in the spring. We want to get the new commissioners' opinions on what should be in the code before we bring that to the assembly for passing. Did that clarify? I may have written something wrong there.
No, I was here to talk to you after the meeting.
Okay.
Anything else regarding internal development? Okay, moving on to programming. Any questions regarding programming? Or does Ms. Gupta have anything very important to add?
Oh, I forgot to add in there that my new vice chair is John King, and he's missing over from the committee he brought in the spring.
Okay, anything else regarding programming? Okay, moving on to facilities. Anything pressing? Mr. Mance?
The only thing pressing is I didn't have a chance to put this in my type report because it wasn't time, but I went to the Hub Robertson Advisory Board meeting today. Just two major things. The computer store wants to move to 104 Hub, and secondly, the ID Plus office wants to move and expand into where the old STA office, I believe it is, used to be. And also, I just want to say generally, I think that we need a lot more student representation on the Hub Robertson Advisory Board. I'm learning about ways that we can.
Good idea. Anything else regarding facilities? Ooh, you don't have the floor. Representative Karasik?
I yield the floor to.
Any objections to yielding the floor to Pat Gordon? Okay, go ahead.
Nick, the computer store is actually already there. They're talking about they're renewing their lease for December. Just correction, the computer store is already in 104.
Okay, thanks for the point.
Okay, anything else regarding facilities? Thank you. Moving on to academic affairs, Mr. Smith, if you have anything to add, or are there any questions regarding academic affairs? Representative Smith?
Yeah, I wanted to apologize. I sent Ralph my committee report a couple hours ago, but I guess it didn't make it to the table. So I'll make sure to send it a little bit earlier next time.
Anything regarding academic affairs? Okay, moving on to governmental affairs. Representative Miller?
Yeah, you don't have a written report this week because there's really nothing new to put on there. We're still doing Lieutenant Van Warning. You'll see that the next meeting.
Any questions? Okay, moving on to diversity in campus life. Representative Lucas?
Just a quick update. We reviewed various resolutions this week. details. And we also shared critiques and comments about the sexual assault module that we brought to our attention. And also, if you guys haven't seen this, this is newly released by the Commission for Women. Check this out. They've been doing years of research on this kind of stuff, and finally distributed it. So,
Mr. Cairns?
You mean we're having a diversity roundtable?
yes.
Anything else regarding diversity in campus life? Okay, moving on to comments for the good of the order. Representative Lombard?
I just wanted to say, like, with the Academic Council Conference, I'm just starting to get invitations out again, like I said today. For those of you that are in other academic councils, can you please let your executive board know that they're either got an invitation or getting an invitation, and that it's December 10th, 6:30 to 8, and we're looking to have about 2 executive board members per academic council in attendance. So please try to forward that message on to them, please.
Representative Morales?
Everyone's gone abroad. It's a great working with you. Good luck. Have fun. I'll pass it.
Representative Leonard?
I just want to say thank you for passing the allocation of money towards the fund event. I really do appreciate it. And for those that weren't confident in what we were doing with the money or abstaining, I do want to assure you that we're going to spend as little as possible, and that everything will be documented, and everything obviously will be documented. Everything will be brought back to the assembly at their attention. Thanks.
Representative Shermansky?
2 quick things. I just want to wish everybody happy Thanksgiving. Say hi to your family for me, and eat lots and lots of turkey. And one other thing, go Penn State. We really need this victory now because the Rose Bowl is on the line. So just want to let it be known that, yeah, we are PSU. So.
Representative Vance?
I just want to say it's great to see everyone's enthusiasm tonight and your support with what my committee was trying to do with the Commons Area Rec Room fee. I'm really proud of some of the amendments and some of the discussion that happened. And I hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving.
Representative Smith?
Yeah, as far as the Miller, first of all, everybody's here, that's amazing. But even more so is but
Arch left.
it just really seems like we really stepped it up. At Academic Affairs last week, we had 19 people there, and I mean, the only thing we're missing is delegates. Apparently, we're really fantastic. Personally, I want to totally thank representatives from Academic Affairs. Not just your job, because you really do an excellent job at it. And I hope you know that even if your work doesn't be publicized that much, you are doing quite a bit of work we have to do. So thank you guys.
Other comments? Representative Okelberg?
I would just like to note my sadness that UQA has decided against getting jackets as a whole, but Ms. Gupta has been so nice to suggest that if you want to actually get one with your own money, that she's willing to, and I'm strongly in favor of this because I think those are really, really cute.
He's
professional. I'm professional.
Okay. Other comments for the good of the order? Mr. Crivello?
I just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, have a safe drive home, and just to point out, we only have 1 assembly meeting left this semester. That's when we get back. We have a work session. No, that's not don't laugh. We have 1. So that means we have a lot to get done in that 1 meeting. So while we're all here and that's wonderful, let's keep up the good work, and remember we only have 1 meeting, so let's get a lot done in that time.
Other comments? I will allow you to, yes.
I just want to remind everybody, tomorrow night is the holiday tree lighting from 5:50 to 7:30, just right out at Allen Street Gates. Also remember when you're going home for the weekend, or going home for the extended week, to make sure you lock your doors, windows, everything. I know sometimes I always forget to do that, but especially if you have a house, check all the windows on the ground floor and 2nd floor for just safety. And that's it. Thanks. Have a good holiday.
Mr. Torres?
Everybody's actually also free tomorrow evening, a little bit later in the evening. It's Hunger and Homelessness Week, so you have the hunger benefit, and tomorrow there
service opportunities that everybody can actually get part of. And I'm actually going to be presenting on the UNICEF 6 Cents Initiative. And for every 6 cents that you raise, one entire life is saved. So check it out.
I have a question, real quick. If I'm around next week, say Friday, Saturday, Sunday, is that too late to help out with that, or do I need to do something with that this weekend?
Actually, the State College Food Bank is currently looking for volunteers throughout this week to finish putting together Thanksgiving baskets for the families. So anybody that's going to be in town for break, stop by the State College Food Bank. It's on Fraser Street, and you won't even have to go past NPI before that. It's right across the State College football field. So check it out.
Okay. Representative Lucas?
I'd first like to thank everyone for the discussion tonight. I know I got a little out of hand first, but I'm pumped up, and that's just how I am. But now that we're making announcements, something on a more somber note, tomorrow is going to be Transgender Day of Remembrance. This day is celebrated nationally to remember transgender victims of hate crimes. A group on campus called Speak Out is going to be doing an event at the Hub Lawn. I believe they're doing a display tomorrow on Hub Lawn all day. Last year they did fake gravestones of different victims, and at 6 p.m. on the Hub Lawn they're going to have a candlelight vigil. So if you'd like to, pay respects, that'd be great.
Other comments for the good of the order? I have a comment. If you did not hear yet, the senior class gift 2009 will be a restoration of the original bell in the bell tower. So let's make sure it's still here in 100 years. Representative Barr?
On a lighter note, there'll be another fundraiser or Lion Street event. The Sigma New Sausage Fest will be it's a hot dog eating competition. It will be December 3rd. It's $35 a team of 3. If you'd like more information, talk to me after the meeting.
Okay, any other comments? Moving on to closing roll call. Secretary?
Her computer's reloading right now, so we're all going to have to wait an extra minute or two.
No one has walked out.
Yeah, no one.
Since we took.
Except for
Yes.
Andrew, so I will do that.
Wait, who?
It's not. Okay, this meeting is adjourned.